Good afternoon. Yeah.
So we are also recording the session, so I hope it's okay with everyone. Thank you.
Yes.
So very good afternoon to all. I am Dr. Saikat Datta Mazumdar. I'm a principal scientist and cluster leader of the Smart Food, Nutrition and Dietary Behavior Cluster of AIC-ICRISAT's Global Research Program, Enabling Systems Transformation. I also hold the position of the Chief Operating Officer of the NutriPlus Knowledge Program of the Agribusiness and Innovation Platform here at AIC-ICRISAT. I'm honored to welcome you all to this webinar on promoting Nutri and gender-sensitive resilient food systems, being organized by the International Crops Research Institute for the Semi-arid Tropics on the occasion of World Food Day 2022. The theme of this year's World Food Day is Leave No One Behind. In fact, the theme Leave No One Behind is in fact the central transformative promise of the 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development and its Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. It represents the unequivocal commitment of all UN member states to eradicate poverty in all its forms, end discrimination and exclusion, and reduce the inequalities and vulnerabilities that leave people behind and undermine the potential of individuals and of humanity as a whole. Thus, this year's theme of the World Food Day resonates well with the overarching agenda of the UN SDGs and also AIC-ICRISAT's nutrition strategy to promote Nutri-sensitive agri-food systems, which is in tandem with the UN SDGs and various countries' agri-Nutri policies. Hence, to deliberate on ways that shall contribute to improved healthy diets and sustainably produce foods through inclusive food systems transformation within drylands of Asia and Africa, this webinar has been aptly titled as Promoting Nutri and Gender-Sensitive Resilient Food Systems. The webinar includes strategic insights from our guest of honor, a keynote address, presentations and discussions from eminent speakers with expertise and knowledge from across the food system. As the role of government, and most importantly that of policymakers, is key to developing and successfully implementing strategies for enabling inclusive food systems transformation, we are extremely happy to have with us our guest of honor, Ms Mansi Nimbhal, IAS, State Mission Director cum Chief Executive Officer, Odisha Livelihoods Mission's Govt of Odisha. Thank you, Madam, for gracing the event by sparing your valuable time out from your busy schedule. Ms Mansi Nimbhal is a 2010 batch Indian Administrative Service Officer. She is a computer engineer and has a master's in public policy from King's College London. After having worked in Kalahandi, Mayurbhanj and Gajapati districts in Odisha in key administrative positions, she took over the position of director at the Disability Department. Having a keen sense of new and innovative ideas, she has to her credit of having successfully organized the first ability marathon for people with disability. She is also instrumental in promoting the successful Koraput Coffee Initiative under the Tribal Development Cooperative Corporation of Odisha Limited in 2019. At present, she is holding the key position of State Mission Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Odisha Livelihoods Mission, or OLM, which is working on empowering women and improving their livelihoods. I also take this opportunity to welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Sanu Jacob. Dr. Jacob is Director of Southern Regional Office, Chennai, Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, FSSAI. In the past, Dr. Jacob has worked as Director, Science and Standards, Director, Quality Assurance, and Director, Codex at the FSSAI headquarters, New Delhi. He also held the position of Joint Director in charge of Export Inspection Agency, Mumbai. He has also served as faculty, associate and assistant professor in different academic institutions and universities in Kerala, India. He has worked as an agriculture researcher and visiting scientist at various institutions around the world. Dr. Jacob obtained his PhD from the University of Milan, Italy, and he has expertise in agriculture sciences. He has also 3 postdoctoral experiences in France, Italy, and Canada. Dr. Jacob is also a member of the International Society of Horticultural Sciences and a Life Associate of the International Food Safety and Quality Network. In India, he's the life member of the Association of Food Scientists and Technology, India, Science Congress Association, Society of Biotechnologies, and Kerala Academy of Sciences. He also serves as a member of Research Advisory Committee of TIST Kerala, India. And to utilize his acumen, he serves in the editorial board member of the Journal of Food Science and Technology and Journal of Post-Harvest Technology. He was also selected as an external expert to evaluate European Union Corporation of Science and Technology research proposals. I also welcome our esteemed speakers, Ms. Pradnya Paithankar, SDG Manager, UN World Food Programme, Dr. Ganesh Ramamurthi, Chief Operating Officer of National Commodities Management Service Limited, and Dr. Padmaja Ravula, Principal Scientist, Sociology, Gender and Nutrition Research at ICRISAT. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Victor Afari-Sefa, our Regional Program Director of ICRISAT's Global Research Program, Enabling Systems Transformation, which is hosting this webinar to deliver the theme address on this occasion. Dr. Victor holds a PhD in Agriculture Economics from the Justus Liebig University, Gießen, Germany. He is an agricultural economist and research for development practitioner with over 20 years post-graduation experience in programs and project design, implementation management, feasibility and impact assessment, and resource allocation. He has multi-country program and project management experience and has been coordinating multidisciplinary research in agricultural value chains in sub-Saharan Africa and Asia, where he emphasizes on proactive planning processes to attain set deliverables. Dr. Victor understands and promotes public-private partnerships as one of the mechanisms to introduce, test, and validate agricultural innovations to enhance household resilient production system, market efficiencies, landscape management, institutional and inclusive policy reforms, and impact investments. Dr. Victor is a successful author and co-author of several grant proposals and has 90 peer-reviewed articles in international scholarly journals. He has also published several books and book chapters. Dr. Victor transitioned into research career position from an academic background where he taught and researched diverse courses in agriculture and economic development, thinking and practice. He remains connected to academia as an adjunct professor at a few universities in sub-Saharan Africa. Over to you, Dr. Victor, for your theme address. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Saikat. A very good afternoon to all. Distinguished guest of honor, Ms Mansi Nimbhal, Indian Administrative Service and State Mission Director, Chief Executive Officer, Odisha Livelihoods Mission. Respected keynote speaker, Dr. Sanu Jacob, Director, Southern Regional Office, Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. Distinguished panel members, Ms. Pradnya Paithankar, Manager SDG's UN World Food Programme in India. Dr. Ganesh Ramamurthi, Chief Operating Officer, National Commodities Management Services Limited. My fellow colleagues from ICRISAT, Dr. Padmaja Ravula, Principal Scientist, Sociology, Gender, Nutrition Research, and Dr. Saikat, Datta Mazumdar, also Principal Scientist and Cluster Leader of our Smart Food, Nutrition, and Dietary Behavior, and all cherished participants who are attending this webinar. On behalf of Senior Management of ICRISAT, I would like to extend a hearty welcome to all of you to this webinar entitled Promoting Nutri and Gender-Sensitive Resilient Food Systems, that is being organized on the occasion of the World Food Day 2022, which is observed every year on the 16th of October. As we are all aware, this is on a Sunday, and we decided to have this commemoration today. Now, the World Food Day, as we are all aware, is a commemoration of the day when the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, of the UN was founded in 1945. The day is celebrated by all UN member states, India not excluded. The primary focus is to tackle global hunger and with strive to eradicate hunger across the entire world. Now, this year's theme, as already mentioned by my colleague Saikat, is Leave No One Behind. Now, this is an ambitious one. Leaving no one behind not only entails reaching the poorest of the poor, but also requires combating discrimination and rising inequalities within and amongst countries and their root causes. Now, a major cause of people being left behind is persistent forms of discrimination, including gender discrimination, which leaves individuals, families, whole communities marginalized and excluded. It is also grounded in UN's normative standards that are foundational principles of the Charter of the UN on international human rights law and national legal systems across the world. The UN approach to leaving no one behind is set out in the shared framework on leaving no one behind, which emphasizes equality and non-discrimination as being the core at the heart of sustainable development, and is endorsed by the Chief Executive Board in November 2016. Now, this includes a shared framework for action to ensure the UN system puts the imperative to combat inequalities and discrimination at the forefront of the UN, and its efforts to support implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Now, currently, the entire world is grappling with what is typically known as a triple burden of malnutrition, which is the coexistence of lack of adequate calories, or what is otherwise known as hunger. Secondly, on lack of adequate micronutrients, what is known as hidden hunger. And lastly, on the consumption of excess calories that leads to non-communicable or lifestyle diseases such as obesity and diabetes. Now, all these three sometimes exist in the same community and creates lots of problems. Thus, there's a need to build a sustainable ecosystem where everyone, everywhere has regular access to affordable and safe, as well as nutritious food. But most importantly, obtaining a balanced diet. Transformation of agri-food systems by implementing sustainable and holistic solutions that consider development in the long term, inclusive economic growth and greater resilience is the need of the hour. Madam Guest of Honor, the COVID-19 pandemic, as we are all aware, has brought along new challenges at overcoming underlying global nutrition crisis and highlighted the importance of eating sustainable foods to combat diverse forms of malnutrition, hidden hunger, as I already mentioned, and diet-related non-communicable diseases, while improving community resilience. At this juncture, I would like to highlight that ICRISAT, as an international agricultural research center, envisions a prosperous, food-secure, and resilient dryland systems. Our mission is anchored in reducing poverty, hunger, malnutrition, and environmental degradation in the dryland tropics. As you might be aware, ICRISAT is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, and we are very honored to celebrate this with all. I would like to emphasize on some of the achievements that we have chalked in terms of agricultural development and food and nutritional security. Now, we have introduced biofortified varieties of sorghum and pearl millet, which are rich in iron and zinc. These varieties are helping to address malnutrition, especially in the control of anemia, which is prevalent among women and children, both in rural and urban communities. Also, our high calcium finger millet lines are also good for bone health. ICRISAT's efforts has also led to the development of high protein varieties of pulses, such as chickpea and pigeon pea, and more recently also high oleic granite varieties, which in combination with millets can address not only malnutrition, but also critical non-communicable lifestyle diseases that I mentioned earlier. ICRISAT embraces an entrepreneurial ecosystem in agriculture by opening new avenues for farmers, women in particular. The interventions benefit farmers to adopt improved agricultural practices, which in turn drive for higher productivity and production of crops. ICRISAT is also working towards enabling sustainable nutrition-sensitive food systems transformation in the drylands by promoting improved health, diverse, safe, and affordable diets, as well as sustainable produced food for developing and implementing evidence-based nutrition-sensitive behavioral change agriculture and value chain interventions. ICRISAT also works with various government departments, public and private companies, civil society, research institutions, and educational institutions to understand the existing nutritional and gender gaps, and thereby address the local and global challenges that the world is currently being faced with. At this point, I would also like to give a brief of ICRISAT's registered branded smart food initiative. This is a global initiative led by ICRISAT along with its partners in India and Africa. Smart food itself is one of the solutions that contribute to addressing some of the largest global issues in unison, focusing on poor diet, from undernutrition to obesity, environmental issues, climate change, water scarcity, soil fertility, plant nutrition, environmental degradation, among others, as well as rural poverty. The Smart Food Initiative focuses on smallholder farmers' access and across the globe, with emphasis on Africa and Asia, to ensure that rural communities benefit from increased demand and from the health and nutritional benefits of the smart food. Now, what is smart food? Smart food is food that fulfills three major criteria. It is good for you. That means that health benefits for consumers. It is good for the planet. That means, or refers to the environmental benefits that I underscored earlier on. And finally, it is good for the farmer in terms of getting income, but also improved nutrition for their households. The smart food family encompasses crops such as sorghums, millets, and legumes, including chickpea, pigeon pea, groundnut, and green gram. Hence, this smart food initiative contributes to 5 of the UN SDGs, namely overcoming poverty and hunger, that's SDG 1 and 2, responsible consumption and production, SDG 12, along with adaptation to climate change, SDG 13, promoting gender equality, that is linked to SDG 5, and finally, action through partnerships under SDG 17. The government of India has accorded high priority to malnutrition in the country and is implementing several schemes and programs under different ministries and departments through state government unions and territories, administrations to address this situation. To curb the malnutrition crisis across the country, the government launched the Poshan Abhiyan program, which is the Prime Minister's overarching scheme for holistic nutrition to improve nutritional outcomes for children, pregnant women, and lactating mothers. After understanding the impact and prospect of the scheme, the government has amalgamated various programs with similar objectives, such as supplementary nutrition program and Poshan Abhiyan under one umbrella on a mission Poshan 2.0 for creating synergies in operations and adopting an integrated approach in the nutrition services mechanism. That ICRISAT is also working to raise nutritional levels of rural and tribal communities in India through various intervention projects, and is also part of these interventions introduced by the government. This includes projects in states such as Odisha, Telangana, and Andhra Pradesh, to name a few. For example, the Giriposhna project, in collaboration with the Tribal Welfare Department, Government of Telangana, is an initiative approach to address malnutrition among children between the ages of 3 and 6 years, adolescent girls, pregnant women, and lactating mothers. The major objective of this project is to provide particularly vulnerable tribal groups, PVTG population, with nutritious products made with sorghum, millets, and pulses, which in the long run shall facilitate in improving key nutritional parameters such as reducing underweight among children, improving the hemoglobin levels of anemic population. With the International Year of Millets 2023 around the corner, it is the right opportunity to implement these kinds of millet-based institutional intervention schemes all over the globe and mainstream millets into the regular diet of rural and urban communities, which is also a high agenda on the government of India. Finally, I would like to highlight that ICRISAT is also working closely with the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, on harnessing the potential of regenerative agriculture as a low-emission development pathway for improved resilience, soil health, livelihood, and nutrition in India. This is on the basis of growing climate crisis. Continuous cropping tends to deplete soil nutrient reserves that requires replenishment with essential macro and micronutrients, along with nutrient recycling of livestock-based systems to enhance plant nutrition while promoting environmental stewardship. In addition, extinction of agrobiodiversity and high volatile markets have raised stern fears for achieving some of the SDGs, especially those related to agriculture. Consequently, it has become prudent to engage in sustainable farming systems that address both productivity for enhanced food and nutrition security while addressing environmental degradation in India and several other countries that face similar challenges. Various farming methods which aim to reduce the dependence on external inputs adopt diverse practices such as no tillage, minimum tillage, use of natural inputs such as inoculation of soils with compost extras to restore soil microbial community, and planting multiple crop, intercrop plantings, multi-species cover crops, and border planting for bees and other beneficial insects are interchangeably known as in different names as regenerative agriculture, conservation agriculture, sustainable agriculture, natural farming, among others. Such practices indeed help to improve soil, primarily through the practices that increase soil organic matter. And of course, the related issues of carbon credits and the carbon markets. I'm sure that this webinar being organized around the World Food Day theme, Leave No One Behind, would increase and create more awareness among different stakeholders to work towards Nutri and gender-sensitive agri-food systems, especially empowering and ensuring inclusion of vulnerable communities. With these words, I take the opportunity to thank you all very much for your kind attention and wish all fruitful deliberations in this webinar. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Victor, for your theme address, and of course, highlighting ICRISAT's work, especially focusing on enabling food systems transformation in the drylands, and that directly contributes towards the central theme of transformative promise to leave no one behind of the 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development and the SDGs, and also the theme of the World Food Day today. Now I request our honorable guest of honor, Ms. Mansi Nimbhal, Madam, to deliver her special address. Over to you, Madam, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Saikat. First of all, I'm really pleased to be present here among all of you, and I welcome all of you to this webinar, all the distinguished guests from who are the panelists, Dr. Victor Afari, who just finished his address, key address. It was very insightful to see so many activities ICRISAT is doing. The following panelists, Dr. Ganesh, Dr. Padmaja, Ms. Pradnya, and Dr. Sanu Jacob, Director, South Region Office, Food Safety Standards. So I welcome all of you. So when we talk of no one left behind, particularly with the sense of on the World Food Day, the main focus is people who are already on the marginalized section area, who already are, having insufficient access to food system. So not only we have to see that they get the access to the food system, but we have to ensure they get the right nutrient from those food, and they should be able to enjoy the bread basket in such a way that they should eat all diversified food with the right nutrient content. For that, I would say the role of policymaker, along with various civil service organization, international organization, such like ICRISAT, plays a key role in that. And with respect to Government of Odisha, in the scope of our Department of Mission Shakti, where I'm presently working, I must say that we are actually leaving no stone behind to make sure that the women of our self-help groups have direct access to the food supply chain. Also, they are aware about nutritious food supply and how they can include the nutritious meal in their daily routine with the help of establishing Nutri garden, backyard Nutri garden, which we call Mo Kari Bagicha. So the effort is continuous. It does not stop. It is a continuous exercise which we are committed to and which we need support and partnership of everyone, from the members of society to civil society organization, and as I said, international reputed organizations like ICRISAT. And at this junction, I would say that in Odisha Livelihood Mission, where we are working presently, the institution setup is in such a way that the grassroots level women are given tremendous opportunities as well as capacity building in order to know their own rights, as well as being aware of the minimum requirement which they think which can be useful for them to lead a dignified life. So that is something which we are aspiring to, and under that we also have programs where we encourage them to use nutritious and economical food which can be easily grown. And one important food grain is millet, which we are in partnership with Odisha Millet Mission in Government of Odisha, Director in Agriculture Department. We are have already set up a value supply chain of millet. And millet, as you know, it's a climate resilient crop and highly nutritious, a superfood. So we are doing that program for last 5 years now, and it's going to be for another 5 years. So this program like this have a very rightful impact in meeting the nutritious as well as the calorie need of people who are at the marginalized level, and not just them, everyone for that matter. And at this juncture, I would also like to say that ICRISAT has, as Dr. Victor has mentioned quite a lot, has done a huge contribution in coming up of various varieties which are nutritious as well as farmer friendly in terms of less input cost. So they have, I really appreciate the support and the contribution of ICRISAT, especially the groundbreaking success of pigeon pea and groundnut in 2011 to 14, and which is very highly successful initiative. Then we also have partnership in Odisha with ICRISAT in 6 districts. We started this collaboration after Fani, the cyclone which affected Puri, Khurda. So we are developing a sustainable livelihood program through scientific-based intervention in 4 tribal districts of Odisha, other than Puri and Khurda, which is Koraput, Raigada, Gajpati, and Nabarangpur. So the project activities include large number of activities comprising of aerobic composting, mushroom production, apiculture, improved farm machineries, so, and also ensuring the getting the licenses of FSSAI level for setting up millet-based secondary food processing unit. So these are some of the initiatives which we believe that if we, rather than imposing a top-down approach, if we set up these food systems at the district level, at the village level, the block level, it would be more accessible for people to not only enjoy those different varieties of food, but also be having the advantage of nutritious food at their household level. Also, I would like to say that ICRISAT also has developed a gene bank, which serves as a world repository for sorghum again, and millet as well, which comes a huge support for farmers of Odisha, and they're able to get good farming from these two genes, these two products. And we are also happy to say that under the Global Smart Food Initiative of ICRISAT, the millet is promoted as a slogan for good for you, good for planet, and good for farmer. And as I said, it is truly important. We see that no one is left behind, and we see that in the era of climate change, people and farmers are affected by unseasonal rain. Orissa particularly have all the time either cyclone or a storm, low pressure, which hugely affect farming, and particularly who are farmers who are dependent as their only source of livelihood. So bringing millet uh, as an additional crop definitely gives a support to the farmers as a third crop, and growing millet in not so plain areas, because Odisha is a hilly area and tribal population have lots of hilly land where they can take up a second crop, a third crop of millet, and have an additional income support as well as nutritious support as at the household level. So these are some of the initiative I believe is very important, which we as a team, which can impact people in general and people of Odisha in particular. So and another thing, I think this is an overall thing, which both from my Odisha government side and as well as from ICRISAT side we are working. But in general, I would say for for the world at large, we see the world is going through the food crisis, because the number of people who are doing farming is less, and number of people who are the mouths to feed food are increasing. So we have to develop, and we have to develop our farmers, their livelihood in such a way that the number of farmers, those who are growing food, grow the food in such a way that it is income generating for them. As I said, it's a smart food. Also give nutritious varieties of food, so that people at large in general across the world are able to enjoy the labor of their farmers in a much meritorious or advantageous way. So we have to thank all the farmers on World Food Day who have done such hard work and have been continuing to do it, and also will continue in future. Because of them, I would say that World Food Day is because of the farmers, all the farmers across the world. Only because of farmers we are able to enjoy the delicious meal we have on our table every day. So we have to be very thankful to them, and I'm very thankful to all the farmers of the world, particularly in India and Odisha. And we hope that we develop program in such a way that no one actually is left behind in terms of access to nutritious food, particularly in terms of gender, developing resilient food systems so that our women get access to nutritious food, our children, adolescent girl get access to nutritious food and in a sustainable manner, and also tasty food, so that they are able to enjoy healthy food in a much tasty manner. So with that, I would like to conclude. And if there is any question, I would like to respond to that. Thank you, Mr. Saikat.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much for your insightful address. And I think the most important message which we have been able to get from you is that the farmers need to be thanked on this World Food Day. So I think that you brought out very well, and definitely they play a major role and most important role. And that's what we also have been at ICRISAT talking about, inclusive market-oriented development, and the inclusion is with respect to farmers. So I think you brought it out very well. You also highlighted the role of policymakers and partners to help diversify diets through promotion of sustainable food systems. The most important message, I think, is that we need to emulate the work being undertaken by OLM under Mission Shakti, and to promote gender inclusion and promote dignified lives, especially of women, by growing nutritious foods. Even the concept of Nutri gardens need to be promoted further. The focus of millets, we have already working with the OLM, and we would like to take it forward. And of course, the different activities of OLM highlighted by you are not only ensuring inclusiveness of the marginalized rural and tribal communities in the state of Odisha, but it is also ensuring that the local food systems are developed. So that's very critical, I think, a message which we are getting from your activities in Odisha, that the local food systems need to be strengthened, and women empowerment and sustainable economies. So I think, Madam, if there is any question from the audience, we would like to take it, because I understand you have certain other engagements. Is that right? Or would you like to?
Yes, yes. I
Okay.
would just take questions if at all anyone want to highlight or maybe discuss something. I will be happy to discuss.
Yeah, sure. So the first question is from me, madam, if that's okay. So I would like to understand that with respect to the climate change, what sort of strategies the government of Odisha is adopting, which probably we would like to understand further and take it forward, and see how we could sort of dovetail this with our strategy. So that's one question which I had in mind, because since you're working closely with the different policy makers, maybe even at the central level. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think from agriculture's side, would be in a better position to answer it. But I can just briefly say that Odisha is one of the few states in India who have established a separate department of climate change and environment in the department in government, which is a very rightful move. And all the schemes and policies are now being adjusted, I would say amended, to accommodate the change in climate over the last 10 years. And because Odisha has these climatic unseasonal rain and cyclones regularly, and it has become a regular phenomena. So all our activities are now climate sensitive. From farming to other source of livelihood, we try to incorporate the climate change aspect to it as much as possible. And I would say we have included it. And things like, giving immediate assistance at the cyclone, or giving them alternate source of livelihood because they cannot depend on farming alone, or supplementing the livelihood from in the shape of livestock and animal husbandry, fisheries. These are things which we are supporting as a supplement income support for the farmers. So this is particularly in the aspect of climate change. So, and introducing new climate sensitive agriculture practices, climate smart agriculture, like use of varieties which are less water intensive, can be used with less input substitute, like manures and fertilizers, promoting organic farming. These are something which we are heavily practicing in Odisha.
Yeah, thank you, madam. Are there any questions? Okay, so madam, one more question from my end. What message would you like to give to the youth, especially the rural youth, so that they can continue to be part of this transformation? Because we see a lot of migration and people are not interested anymore. So what is that message, or what should be that strategy for us to make them be part of this change which we are talking about?
Yeah, you see, it is very difficult. In today's world, it is very, very difficult to be a farmer, because being a farmer means a very hard work and dependent on so many other things. So I would like to give messages to the youth that to work together with the government, because we have come up with lots of initiatives where they can be a farmer and get access to the seed, the fertilizers at the doorstep. So they don't need to go anywhere. We are opening up centers of inputs and seeds, fertilizers in the block level, so they don't really have to travel far off area. We are also including starting this year, introducing modern technology in agriculture, which makes it easier to work as a farming, modern equipment for tilling, for rice, and for all kinds of different farm products. So we are introducing modern technology and giving subsidy to women self-help group to avail these modern technology equipments, and post harvesting equipment, because if they grow rice, they need a thresher. If they're growing millet, they need a different post harvesting equipment. So giving them technical know-how, technical assistance, subsidy in technical equipment. So these are some of the initiative we are from starting from end to end. We are supporting the farmers so that from our side, the farming can be as easy for them as possible.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for this message, because this is going live stream on YouTube too, and I'm sure a lot of youth would be motivated and would probably approach us and you to get these things forward. So I would request Dr. Victor, you're around. Dr. Victor.
Yeah.
Yeah, would you like to give a final vote of thanks to madam, because she has to leave? So briefly, would like to thank on behalf of ICRISAT.
Yeah, thank you very much, Saikat. I think that we have really benefited a lot from Ms Nimbhal's address. I also like very much the emphasis on inclusiveness. Of course, you also did mention that. So on behalf of the management of ICRISAT and all the partners, of course, and our farmers and all beneficiaries, I take the opportunity to thank you very much for your time. We know you are always busy, but for making the time to attend this webinar and for sharing your thoughts with us is most appreciated. And I believe and hope that there will be a lot of follow-up. And just like Saikat said, this is being live streamed, so there should be a lot of connections that will come thereafter and follow up. And of course, at ICRISAT also, I know we are working with you on this OLM project. Your colleagues, the project team was there sometime, and we look forward to working with you and other partners to be able to achieve desired improvement in the food and nutritional security for the farmer and the communities as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Now we move on to our presentations and discussions on the theme promoting Nutri and gender sensitive resilient food systems. I request all participants to post their questions in the chat section, mentioning to which panelists the question is addressed. Now I would like to welcome our first speaker, Dr. Ganesh Ramamurthi, who will make a presentation on agri-to-food value chain interventions to enhance consumption of nutritious and safe food. Dr. Ganesh Ramamurthi is, are you there? Are you around, Dr. Ganesh?
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. Can you spotlight Dr. Ganesh, please? Dr. Ganesh Ramamurthi is the Chief Operating Officer of National Commodities Management Services Limited, where he is responsible for driving the implementation of quality management system across the enterprise, ensuring operational integrity and efficiency. He is focused on building, motivating, and managing teams across the country with a clear drive, winning mentality, and a creative mindset to develop strong relationships with large customers, integrating the use of technology in all the processes, and creating a robust technology platform that enables business teams to expand. He has been with the company since 2005 and has headed the testing and inspection unit, now called NCML Labs, and the corporate weather intelligence unit, also known as ACCON at NCML. Before joining NCML, he served as an academician at as an head of the Department of Microbiology at the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan Vivekananda College, Hyderabad. He is also known for his inspirational and high energy leadership style that results in sustainable success. Dr. Ganesh holds a master's degree in microbiology from GB Pant University of Agriculture and Technology and he's an alumni of the Department of Botany, Osmania University. Dr. Ganesh is also an excellent person in terms of, he's a very good friend of mine. And Dr. Ganesh, it's always a pleasure to have you. And over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saikat. My co-panelists, Dr. Padmaja, Dr. Victor, Dr. Sanu Jacob, Ms. Pradnya, and Ms. Mansi Nimbhal, who just left. I think we celebrate this World Food Day on the 16th of October every year. And it is very appropriate that we reminiscent on how the food comes, what the food system is all about. And at the core of all of this, there is somebody who is producing the food for us, and that is the farmer. So this is the time to think about somebody who is producing the food for us, and at least look behind and see what are the difficulties faced by the various people in the value chain, which we call it as the agri-value chain. In the next 15-20 minutes, I'll try and provide you what actually happens with respect to the agri-value chain and how interventions and some changes in the agri-value chain can bring about safe and nutritious food for all of us to consume. But looking at the World Nutritional Report of 2021, I would just take a moment to tell all the audience here that India may have migrated to the 5th position in terms of GDP, crossing England to $3.25 trillion US. But if you want to look at India's progress towards the global nutritional targets, there are about 13 elements that are tested. And out of all of these 13, there are only 2 items. One is the child stunting, the other is the child overweight, which we are on course along with exclusive breastfeeding. These are the 3 elements which we are on course. Anemia and child wasting, the progress has been worsening. Low birth weight, raised blood pressure, obesity in women, obesity in men, diabetes in men, diabetes in women, all of these are either off course of the targets that we have set for ourselves. About 10% of adult population suffer from NCDs, or non-communicable diseases, and they are directly or indirectly linked to the nutrition that we consume. Now, I'm just setting the ball here that India's economic progress does not directly mean that we have a healthy life for the human beings in India. And this is very clearly stated in the India profile of the Global Nutritional Report of 2021. So having said this, but there is always a hope for all of us that we could consume what Victor talked about, the portion 2.0, or what Ms Mansi Nimbhal talked about, these smart food initiatives of the ICRISAT. So there is a hope for us that at a given point of time, we may be able to consume the right kind of food and therefore lead a healthy life, a potentially healthy life.
Dr. Ganesh, are you talking from a presentation at this moment?
No.
No, okay. Sorry for that. Yeah, please.
So this is, I was just setting the ball in terms of the nutritional status, where we are. And therefore, then let's come, once we have stated the problem, we want to look at what would be the agri to food value chain. How does the agricultural product become the food? And then how we consume it, and what are the interventions in making them safe, making them nutritious. Can you have the first slide, please? So the outline is, let's look at a simplistic view of marketing and agricultural value chains, the dynamic markets, understanding of agricultural chains, market access and the value chains, and the positions and the strengthened positions towards the agri-value chain. Now, I would like to look at all of these with typical examples and what we have learned in the last 15 years, seen the agri-value chain very, very closely. Can I have the next slide, please? So typically, a simplistic marketing system talks about a producer, a market. The producer comes with the goods and the services, and then the market buys, makes the payment for it, which is a simple marketing system that we know of. Now, having said that, we know that a lot of information and communication is required before any action can be taken. So a seller has to sell based on what kind of price that his expectations are. What is the price in the nearby mandis? What is the price that his neighbor farmer had sold? And therefore, these are set of information that needs to be communicated, basis which a transaction can happen. Can I have the next slide, please? So, in reality, marketing is not as simple as we have seen in the earlier. So when somebody takes it to a mandi or a marketplace, there are traders, there are commission agents, then there are buyers, then who buy for the processors, and these processors sell it to the wholesalers sell it to the retailer. So the pull comes from the consumption end or the market. So whenever a retailer sets a target with a wholesaler and asks for goods, the wholesaler in turn places orders for the processor to process, and the processor now wants the raw material to process, who in turn goes back to the traders and say, please allow for so much of goods to be sent to my company so that I can process and send it to the wholesaler. So why we call this chain as a value chain, in the sense that every step, once the producer brings it, there is some value addition to the goods as it moves from one partner in the chain to the next partner. But at each of these, there is need for a lot of information, a lot of communication, and decisions have to be taken whether to buy which variety, whether to buy from X place or the Y place, whether to process at the production center or at the consumption center, use a truckload or a train load or a rake. So these are certain decisions which is making the entire value chain economically viable. So when the product passes through a variety of people in the value chain, actors in the value chain, stakeholders in the value chain, we find that the farmer, who is the producer, right, and final consumer, the retail consumer, you and me, consumer. So from producer to consumer, the chain of events that happen, we tend to call it as an agri-value chain. Can I have the next slide? Now, this is fraught with a lot of changes. When I say that a simple notion of markets and marketing, if I start producing vegetables and I know that every household buys vegetables on a daily basis. So therefore, I assume that surely I have a ready market for the vegetables. But the reality is that there is no assurance for ready market. I produce potatoes, or I produce onions, or I produce cabbage or a cauliflower. The day the harvest comes, right, it depends on what the weather would be, what the time would be, what the demand would be, what the other farmers have produced would be, will decide what will be the amount I can sell and what price that I can sell. So the simple notion that just because there is a perceived demand for vegetables, if I start growing vegetables, there is no there is no guarantee that all my vegetables get sold at the rates that I need. So therefore, the markets are very dynamic. they work on the demand supply, they work on economic viability, and therefore this is very, very important in terms of how the value chain has to change. Can I next slide? Now, the most important part for the farmer, can I explain, Manisha? So, in markets, especially the post-harvest, when we're talking of agri products, now we need to see that we produce and then try to sell the product. Now, the trend is to know the market, what is the requirement of the market. If the market wants X product, then the farmer goes back to produce which are the commodities in demand. Now, that trend is very much prevalent today. So if millets are going to be consumed in larger numbers, then the farmers will have a certain amount of their land dedicated for millets, because they know that going forward there could be some choice for selling millets at economically viable rate. Can I explain this? Now, this also has a very important perspective that today we have agri markets with dual phase. Now, when all the products pass through this value chain to get to the market and market to the end consumer. Now, over a period of time, you have seen that there has been huge amount of efficiencies that are brought in these agri value chains, both in terms of quality, both in terms of standards, both in terms of how things move from the producer to the consumer. So there are two parts to it. One is the digital support for information and communication through development of various kinds of ICTs. Number two, the physical infrastructure availability in terms of warehouse, cold store, ripening chambers, roads, bridges. So the physical infrastructure and the digital support in terms of ICT have enormously increased, and these have set forth the new rules of the game. So the consumer is demanding the right quality. Now, the Food Safety and Standards Authority is propagating the Eat Right mission. Now, the consumers are aware, the consumers are knowledgeable of what is to be eaten and what not to. And therefore, there is a preferential purchasing power exhibited by the consumer. So there is definitely a consumer-led push. So the products which pass through this entire value chain can come to the consumer, provided we find that the consumer gets what he wants. Now, this is in tune with the safety and the nutritional quality that the product is likely to have. Can I explain? So, if you look at the interventions could be the consumer pull, as I said. The next is the policy push. Now, unless and until the ecosystem, the environment, the government, the people, the civil society, the entire ecosystem is making it amenable, right? Because end of the day, if it becomes fashionable to eat millet pakoda, if it becomes possible to eat those products which are nutritiously good for the well-being of humans, then there is a commercial opportunity there. Then there are standards for them. Then there is investment for them. So therefore, the factors which can intervene in an agri-value chain that creates a complete technology-based industry of agri-value chain is through a consumer pull and a policy push. And this can include the small producers, the small SMEs, the processors, so which could be farm gate processors or at a larger scale processes. So all of these require the support of policies, institutions, the business models collectively supported by the financial institutions, collective action of various support systems, including the R&D. Now, this is what the interventions in the agri-value chain can lead to the targets that are set forth in either the global nutritional targets and the Indian nutritional targets, and also the various abhiyans, including the Poshan 2.0. Now, this would be, from my perspective, the key to support and intervene in a way that all of us have access and affordability to food, which is nutritionally sound, and it is safe for consumption. Can I have the next slide? Now, our practical experience has been to theorize the fact that there is an agri-value chain and these are the participants is easier said. But when it comes to going down to the bass tracks, you will find that every step has got multiple dynamics of entry, exit, the modes of procurement, and how actually it happens. So if you are looking at buying a guava on a street vendor and trying to trace from where it is coming, it will be very, very difficult, because it goes through a series of participants from the guava orchard right through to the street vendor from whom you procure. So therefore, the dynamics at every stage, the economy at every stage, and the amount of the ecological footprints that they create in terms of creating greenhouse gases, all these put together brings about a huge amount of market dynamics. And we have mechanisms today and certain frameworks. And these frameworks, especially what is referred to as the TBRI agri-food. TBRI agri-food is a framework which actually takes into account the economics, the ecological, and the business requirements of agri and food. Now, this framework actually tells us how this the entire mechanism at every step of agri-value chain can be mapped and accounted for from the point of view of the emission of greenhouse gases at every step, from the point of view of the environment, and the economic additions that they do at every step. And a record keeping of it will tell us what is the cost of production and what the farmer gains, and what is the cost of the produce that the consumer pays, and what are the intervening steps. And this framework can tell us, and this can lead to another concept, which is called the concept of prosumer, where the producer is directly supplying it to the consumer, and in which case there is reduction in greenhouse gases also. So which is currently we call it as the hyper global local, or the local effect, where we are talking about producing locally and consuming locally, so that there is enough margins for the farmer and the reasonable pricing for the consumer. Can I have the next slide? So finally, can I have the next slide, please? The next one. So what we are talking of in terms of, can I have the next slide? So the agri-value chain and the supply chain management is critical, and this can add value with respect to having the chain participants where there is a network of processes and precedents, there is absolute coordination, and there is the deployment of resources and operations which support a decision which has a smooth interface among the various agri-value chain participants. Can I have the next slide? I take last couple of minutes to see that what market access means. See, market access is very, very important because for the producer, being able to bring the products to the market and have a reasonable value for it, which is much above what his cost of production is. Now, we have this, or we continue to have this project called the Doubling the Farmer's Income, or the DFI. While the project goes on, but we have seen that the cost of production for variety of staples and the perishables have over a period of time increased dramatically. And the end prices, though have increased, the cost or the price that is fetched to the farmer may not be in tune with the increased cost of inputs. Now, within this cost and within this context of this agricultural, sustainable agricultural value chain, we find that what we can do best in terms of what is the accounting framework for the cost that is incurred by the farmer and what is a reasonable price. So we tried out various mechanisms, including the price discovery through commodity exchanges, but at the same time, there are pros and cons for it. And today, majority of the agricultural commodities being traded with the commodity exchanges have been barred from trading, especially the rabi crops of mustard and chana and gram. They are debarred from trade. So therefore, market access is something which is very, very important, and which is the first step in the starting of the agri value chain. Can I have the next slide? So there are two parts to it. One is the vertical integration and the horizontal integration. By vertical integration, what I mean is the specialization in the farm production or the inputs. So the farmer needs to know exactly how to get the best out of the inputs that he has in terms of seeds, fertilizer, pesticide, soil, irrigation, so on and so forth. Horizontal is the post-harvest. The vertical is the post-harvest where he can trade the produce for the rest of the price in terms of what he has already invested. Can I have the next slide? So I'll take you to next slide, please. I'll take you through 3 to 4 slides, which we are talking about the integration of post-farm activities with the specialization. So down below, we are talking of the farm production. What are the inputs? And on the top, we are talking about the post-farm activities. And post-farm activities are definitely require a lot of information and communication. It requires what price to be sold, how much quantity to be sold, what are the exports, what are the current prices, what are the future prices likely to be. So these are the kind of information that are going to be required. Can I have the next slide? So if you look at the chain participant who is specializing in farm production, right? And now, if there is integration with farm activities, so there is a chain activity integrator, which is the number 2. Now, the chain participant also has a chain partner. Now, this could be an extension agency, this could be a digital support, this could be a new actor platform, whatever they are. Now, they together are now looking at the co-ownership of this value chain. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, these are the interventions that can help to increase both in terms of the type of produce and also the safety of the produce. Now, if you look at the chain participant, where we are looking at knowing more about improving the farm product and the quality. So the right kind of seed to be used, right? And the right kind of the package of practices, the right kind of the pesticide schedule to be implemented. Now, this is something very, very important, and this is different for different crops in different geographies in the agroclimatic zones. Now, therefore, this is a specialization in the crop production. Can I have the next slide, please? Similarly, if you look at once a good crop has come into being, now, unless or until you do some kind of a farm gate grading, a farm gate quality enhancement, some kind of a value addition, proper grading, packaging, so that there is some amount of uniformity in the produce. Now, this is very important, and this is integration of the post-farm activities. Can I have the next slide? Now, so the third most important in terms of who will do it. So today we are looking at the farmer producer groups. You call them FPOs, FPVs, FPCs. Now they are the ones who have the knowledge and negotiation skill that can influence a large list of chain participants who have produced good produce, have graded and sorted their produce, but they require a good chain partner in terms of having the knowledge of the market. Can I have the next slide, please? And finally, somebody who can brand, market, create a product out of it is the one who can pull the entire chain participants in bringing about the inclusive agri value chain development, both considering that there is a specialization required in the input side and a specialization required in integrating the post-farm activities in terms of price, in terms of logistics, in terms of warehouse, in terms of pledge finance, so on and so forth. Now, this will be done by cooperatives or agri-value chain companies who can develop this product, do branding, marketing, so that value can be attributed to all the participants in the agri-value chain. So I think this has been my idea for the kind of interventions that the agri-value chain today it requires. But one caveat here is that yes, definitely it can create a good amount of economical and ecological results. But at the same time, the challenge with India is that no two geographies are similar, no two crops and no two geographies are similar, no two mandis are similar, mandi dharas are different, the processing mechanisms are different, the trade mechanisms are different, the entire schema of things in one place do not match in other. So the cotton traded in Abohar, cotton traded in Vashi, or cotton traded in Karnataka or Tamil Nadu are not the same. So they have different kinds of value chain. They have grown over a period of time, and we need to reset ourselves so that things happen in the way that are happening in the existing form. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ganesh. I think you have really identified that missing link. We have been always talking about linking farmers to market, but then that link and what is to be done in that link, and I think you touched upon the 4 forms of inclusive chain development, which you have very clearly explained, and what are the different components. So I think this particular speech of yours would actually help us in further strategizing and understanding, and maybe we get in touch with you also to further see how different value chains can be addressed. And you also talked about that no two geographies in this country is same, or no two mandis are same. So I think very, very localized sort of interventions need to be developed. So a brief question before we move on to you is that how do you see these the areas of artificial intelligence, etc., which is coming in? What sort of things we can leverage from that segment? If you could just throw a quick light on that, given your experience of having worked in that area.
So certainly, so ICT, as I mentioned earlier, also the information communication technology is very, very important, and we have close to 1,500 startups which are working on digital agriculture. So if you look at farm needs or the commodity quality, for example, so lot of digital imaging and AI-enabled mapping, matching are taking place in large scale. So use of blockchain, use of artificial intelligence is already captured the imagination of the food systems. So in the food systems area, we have grown from using basic telephony to, which is the photography on the telephone mobile app, to AI and blockchain. So this distributed ledgers in the blockchain can actually guarantee you the kind of various value chain partners that we listed on, right? All of them through their respective keys can ensure that the trades are fraud free. So what is another important problem with India is that no two trades, right, happen in the same fashion, right? So there could be a trade default, and trade defaults are not uncommon in India, and therefore use of blockchain through use of distributed ledgers is one important way to go forward in developing the agri-value chains.
And how much of this technology you're using today at NCML, just to know?
So we haven't used blockchain as of yet, right? But yes, surely we are using various kinds of applications in terms of capturing data on the commodity quality, which is again image-based requirement. So, but I think going forward, there won't be much choice for all of us but to use these technologies.
Thank you, Dr. Ganesh, and please be with us. I'm sure we'll have some more questions at the end of the. Thank you so much. And our next speaker.
We can't hear you, Saikat.
Our next speaker is Dr. Padmaja from ICRISAT, and she is a principal scientist, sociology, gender and nutrition research at ICRISAT. She's the cluster leader for the Knowledge and Capacity Development Center cluster. She is a sociologist by education and training, and also has a master level skill in nutrition and human development research. She has broad experience working in close collaboration with national and international research institutions, which includes academic institutes. She has worked closely with farmers, NGOs, donors, and governments. She is well versed with and as a practitioner for participatory rural appraisal, PRA tools and methods. She's a creative thinker and therefore also interested in bringing out non-conventional and non-academic interactive products like timelines, video documentaries, visual tools for data collection and analysis. She has served as a visiting scientist at Cornell University at the Dyson School of Agriculture and Applied Economics from October to December 2015. Dr. Padmaja has a PhD in Humanities and Social Sciences with specialization in Sociology from Indian Institute of Technology, Mumbai, a gold medalist. She's a gold medalist for her Master in Human Development and Family Studies, and from the PGST Telangana. So Dr. Padmaja, over to you, and we look forward to you highlighting on the, especially on the gender nutrition front. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saikat. Just to check, am I audible?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Thank you. Thanks for the nice introduction. So I think I can go straight into my presentation. And while I'll be sharing my presentation, I would like to say a good afternoon to all those who have joined for this interesting and a very relevant webinar. And it's also a topic of high relevance in the current context. So okay. And I think it was a very nice transition from my previous speaker, Dr. Ganesh Ramamurthi, who concluded his presentation saying that, you know, everything is so heterogeneous. The markets in one place are not the same, the geographies. So everything changes and depends on the context. And here I would like to add one more difference, that is the gender equality and the social lens inclusiveness into this whole argument of food systems which can actually ensure nutrition for each and everyone. So let me share my presentation. Can everybody see my presentation?
We can see the presentation, ma'am. Can you put it on a full screen?
Yeah, now that's fine.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the topic that I'm going to talk about. But before I actually come to the strategies, a small background and how you can actually reach to the strategies. So the theme of today's, this year's World Food Day, leave no one behind. I think that's a very impressive theme, and everybody has, previous speakers before me have spoken about it. It already suggests inclusiveness. And so this topic is very, very relevant here. But it can also be thought of as an urgent call for the global community. All of us will now, we are already aware of the alarming reality that we are facing, that more and more people are being left behind amidst a spiraling global food security crisis as a result of multiple drivers. So to be inclusive, therefore, it is imperative to connect the dots. And that's what I'm going to just quickly share, like connect the dots between agriculture, nutrition, health, and also agriculture, nutrition, health, and gender equality and social inclusiveness. So why do you think it is very important to connect all these so that we leave no one behind? Why do we need to have this kind of an understanding? We are in an era of transitions and transformation. So you see that there is nutrition transitioning happening. You see there is transition in terms of economic progress. There's transformations happening globally and even locally in many places. Food systems are transforming. Structural transformations are happening. So we are in an era of transitions and transformation. But even in this era of transition and transformation, like where we are already transforming, you could see that food and nutrition security continues to remain critical. It is a critical issue globally, but more so in the global south where we are currently located in. So how can we envision transforming our agricultural systems in order to transform our nutrition and health? That's something that we need to understand. We need to think about how the transformation can happen. And since I'm a sociologist and I have a focus on looking at gender and nutrition issues, I would say that one of the ways, it's just one of the ways, is you need to engender these massive transformations across food, agriculture, health, and the broader environment so that, everybody goes to bed having a full meal, a meal that is nutritious. So for this to happen, sectors need to talk among themselves. At all levels, it could be from the policymakers to the communities, to the individual men, women, boys, girls, adolescents, and also the institutions that are existing in the local level as well as at the global level. And just another point that I would want to share before we move forward in what strategies or what are the roles of women. Let us all remember that the 3 C's will remain for a long time. Climate change, it's already happening and it will continue to stay for some time. Crisis, like the COVID pandemic was one crisis. There could be many more crises we may see in the future. And conflicts. And examples of this is the Ukraine conflict that you could see. And even local conflicts, the Ukraine war, now Russia entering into this regime. You have the local conflicts, etc. So these would be kind of like always there. And what we need to understand here is that the effects and the impacts of these 3 C's that I call them is not Jesse neutral. When I say Jesse, it is gender equality and social. So they are not gender neutral. Not everybody faces the impacts of climate change in a similar manner. Men face the impacts differently. Women have different challenges. Young women may be having a different challenge. A woman is belonging to a remote location in a rural area may be facing it differently. So the point is these are not neutral. Similarly, the burden of malnutrition also is not neutral, right? So these could vary. There are inequities in diets, right? So the diversity of the diets, it could be because of the social and cultural norms around food that we consume. It could be around our dietary habits and practices, but there are inequities in diet diversity. So therefore, there is a strong need now for having a stronger gender and equality lens in food systems transformation. And just to pass through, I would not spend more time on this. The COVID-19 pandemic has reduced whatever progress has been made so far, and it has exacerbated the gender inequalities. This is what the Nutrition International has been talking about. And quickly, just to glance through the diets and SDGs, if you see the quality of the diets or the food that we consume is impacted in 11 of the 17 SDG goals. So it's a very, very important issue that we're talking about today. And food security to nutrition security. Our focus is now shifting. Though food security is important, but we want to move to nutrition security, where availability of food, access to food, affordability of the food, absorption, that is the bioavailability. And along with all the 4 A's, an important A is the agency of the individuals to make the right decisions, to make the right choices for healthy diets. Let's all remember, healthy diets are not a norm. You have to work towards that healthy diets. So what goes into the plate is what matters for food security or even nutrition security. So that's what I would like to say. So how do we build a sustainable, resilient food system? Now, let's also remember that food insecurity, of any group, it could be the tribal communities, it could be the urban communities, it could be the peri-urban communities, or it could be even the young adolescent boys and girls in a particular community. So any community, food and nutrition insecurity is determined by the condition, that is the sustainability and the resilience of the food system. So if the food system is sustainable or resilient, so there is less food insecurity and more chances of being food insecure. The communities are chances of being more food secure. I'm sorry. Let's also remember that there is enough food that is being produced because of the innovations in agricultural system, innovations in technology, like the new varieties, the traits, the high yielding, drought resistance and all that, the innovations that have been made, and ICRISAT has also been a contributor into this. So there is enough food that is being produced, but the problem is there is an unequal access or a distributional issue of food. There is growing inequality in this regard. Again, we also need to see what are the environmental impacts. You are continuing to produce more yields, you're getting more food, but then is there a trade-off between yield and environmental impacts? That needs to be understood. The motivation of the communities to be into agriculture, that's also very important. And similarly, the policy support that we have. Alongside this, we also need to look at the vulnerability of the food system. For a system to be sustainable and resilient, we need to look at the vulnerability of the food system. Population is growing. There is competition for agricultural resources to be used for non-agricultural resources, like agricultural products to be used for other uses, like industrial use, like beer, poultry industry, etc. There are lots of socioeconomic inequalities. Gender inequality is one of them. Also, because of urbanization and because of globalization, the diets of people are changing. The dietary habits and preferences of people are changing. So all this makes the food system more vulnerable. Hence, one of the ways in which we can make the food system, sustainable and resilient from a people's perspective is enhance the capacity of all the individuals and ensure that they get access to all the capitals. Yeah, it could be land, it could be physical resources, it could be financial resources, it could be social resources, that is collective action, etc. So that they have access to all the capitals for everybody, depending on where they are positioned in this whole continuum, and especially targeting the vulnerable and the marginalized. That's one way of ensuring a sustainable and a resilient food system. So let's talk a little more about gender, or why we need to have gender resilient food systems. So women have dual roles. One, they have a central role in food production. We all know that. But then there are a lot of related barriers, and these could be local and global inequalities. Some of these barriers could be access to resources, rights, The women do not have land. They do not have entitlements to land. Land tenure security is another issue that we need to remember. Similarly, there are lots of gender and social norms that limit opportunities for women, that limits their agency. And also there are mobility restrictions, which are again kind of like based on gender and social norms, etc. So these are some of the barriers that women face, though they have a central role in food production. We know that women produce 60 to 70, they're involved in 60 to 70% of the food production. Alongside the central role in food production, they also have a central role in food consumption. So that's the duality of the dual roles women has. And again, there are many barriers. Like you have multiple and disproportionate roles and responsibilities. You know that women work in the field, they work at home, they work for the community. So they have multiple roles and responsibilities. The triple role, say we have made so much of progress, but let's go to an interior village or let's go to a remote village, which is where more and more tribal communities are inhabiting. You see the triple roles of fetching water, firewood or fuel, and fodder still lies on women. So these roles actually take away a lot of time, and then they also take away a lot of energy from them for women to actually perform other tasks. So these are time intensive as well as energy intensive. So whatever food they consume maybe is lost in doing these three roles, which are very, very important as part of the reproductive functions. Alongside this, they also are responsible for health and general well-being of children and other family members. Then a big thing that we need to understand is the gender and social norms with respect to dietary behaviors and practices. These are just some barriers that I'm listing. Even though women prepare the food, they are the ones who are responsible for cooking the food in almost all places globally. They are the ones to eat the last. So you could see what they eat, what goes into their plate. You could already envision that based on your own experiences at our own homes, in the communities where we work, and also global level. So just to show like how, women's empowerment can actually lead to nutritional empowerment, we used a tool called WENI, which is Women's Empowerment in Nutrition Index. And this is based from my study that we had done in Maharashtra. And this is a very interesting, I'm just sharing you one finding from that study where, you have like the domains and the dimensions, like you have the food domain, you have the health domain, you have the institutions. And in these three domains, we're looking at knowledge, we're looking at resources, we are looking at agency of both men, women, and the mother-in-laws, the elderly women. So what this slide actually, as you can see from this, and this small insight, even though it is from one particular location, what it actually tells us, it actually calls an attention, for a policy attention. So you could see like two groups of women. When I say WENI, which is on the top, that is the women who are in the childbearing age and who were the primary respondents for this study. And look at the mothers-in-law. You could see that, in both these cases, the WENI women and the WENI mothers-in-law, on the dimension of knowledge, be it food or health, you could say that younger women, the WENI women were between 15 to 45 years age group, right? Younger women seem to have more knowledge compared to their mothers-in-law about both food as well as health. Now, the spouses, that is the husbands on the other hand, they perform better than the other subgroups on all the dimensions and domains. So this is something. So if they have inadequate knowledge, if they have inadequate information, how would they be able to take care of the nutrition of their family members? Yeah, that's so how do we implement our program so that this gap is addressed? That's one result that I would like to bring out. And similarly, you can see here also, I'm not going to go deeper into this, but I can, during the question answer session, explain this. Look at the intra-household inequities. This result comes from, in the same household, we got the information from the spouse as well as the WENI women. And you could see that overall, 41% of the women were disempowered in terms of nutritional empowerment. Either it could be the knowledge dimension, or it could be the resource dimension, or the agency dimension, or the domains. You could see that women were more disempowered compared to their spouses. So I have 3 strategies that I would like to propose. There are lots, but then
You have 5 minutes, Dr. Padmaja.
yeah, I'm almost closing. Last 3 slides. So I just would like to share with the audience 3 strategies. The first strategy is enhancing the knowledge about healthy diets, consumption of healthy diets. How can this knowledge help in reducing malnutrition? And again, we had a study in the tribal locations of Adilabad, where we organized nutrition education sessions for the elderly women based on our experience from Veni. We organized these sessions for men, for elderly women, for the mothers-in-law, as well as the young mothers, so that their knowledge about healthy diets improves. They have a better understanding of what could be good, healthy dietary practices, along with consumption of healthy foods. So that's the first strategy that I would like to say from a gender and a social inclusive perspective. Have nutrition knowledge for sustainable nutrition. A second strategy is linked to having a gender lens in all that we do, whether it is a market research, whether it is a market development plan that we do, or smart food, or it could be even, simple things like is bringing about awareness about a food or an intervention or a technology or a behavior change that we think about, have a gender lens. This will help men, the women, the marginalized, the vulnerable, to have access to this new knowledge, information, and technologies, and allow them to utilize it. This also, having a strong gender lens also allows us to move beyond the instrumental narrative in food security debates, but engage with the communities, engage with all the stakeholders, so that we get a better understanding about what is the real issue that can be factored into the food security debates. And lastly, understand what are the barriers and the vulnerabilities. So move away from the top-down implementation, instill the consciousness at all levels, so that we can actually identify effective entry points to gain trust and also engage the community in our efforts to bring a more sustainable, resilient human food system. And the last is look at alternative strategies. Like agriculture could be one livelihood strategy, but then we could also look at other strategies. And here I give an example of a micro enterprise or a social enterprise or an enterprise ecosystem. If we can start thinking about developing these kinds of ecosystems, the enterprise ecosystems in the rural areas, in the peri-urban areas, in areas where the most vulnerable, the most marginalized communities are inhabiting, I think that could be one way where they could find alternative sources to enhance their incomes, and also kind of like have better and healthy diets eventually. And just a last point before I close, I would like to say also social protection programs are when measured, like you're having alternative strategies, like, you have the food for work or the NREGA programs, etc. But let's also think about moving beyond the social protection programs. How can we improve the local capacities so that they can earn a livelihood within and outside agriculture? So that's the third strategy, is to think about alternative strategies for livelihood outside of agriculture as well. With this, I close and I say that having a gender lens in all programs, in all projects, in all policies and partnerships will ensure that women and girls can be empowered advocates of their own health and nutrition, as well as their households and communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Padmaja. That was a very exhaustive presentation with a lot of pointed, I think, strategies you talked about. And I think some takeaways from that was in terms of enhancing the agency to address vulnerability. That's something which is very, very important. I think a lot of times we do so many projects, but we go and do the project, we think we have done it, and then when we come out, we realize we have not developed the agency of the community. So I think, and then also you said that the trust of the community needs to be taken into consideration and built as you move along. And then you said engender massive transformation across the food system. So I think that is something which we really need to inculcate as we move along in trying to address the SDGs. And most interesting I found was that your slide on diet quality, touching all the SDGs. We sort of, till now, I never realized that this is something which is so very important. And then diet quality is not just diet quality, but then there are so many factors which ultimately involve. So I think it's the entire ecosystem which needs to be strengthened. And also your talk on moving from the safety net to making the communities resilient through a gender lens is well taken. So I think probably we'll have more questions at the end of the session. And thank you so much for your time and presentation. And now I move on to the next speaker. Yeah. So our next speaker is Ms. Pradnya Paithankar. She is from the World Food Program. Madam, are you there? Yeah, welcome. And thank you for giving us this opportunity to hear from you. We have been always eager to know and see guidance from the World Food Program and work together. So briefly, I would like to introduce Ms. Pradnya Paithankar. Is working as the SDG Manager in one of the world's largest humanitarian organizations, the UN World Food Program. She is currently providing leadership of the WFP India's efforts to bring the sustainable food and nutrition security to the forefront of development agenda by expanding the scope of work to enhance resilience building, which is so important, and adaptive capacity among vulnerable population in changing climate. As head of policy design, South-South collaboration, she is contributing to leverage WFP's expertise globally in the field of climate change, disaster risk reduction, disaster risk management to strategically support government systems to design, monitor, and implement approaches towards achievement of the 2030 SDG agenda, which we all are trying to sort of talk about. Her work involves support to transforming food systems to make them climate resilient and encourage local action through empowered communities. So it's over to you, Ms. Pradnya, to tell us more about the strategies and challenges towards ensuring availability of nutritious food. Over to you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saikat, for that elaborate introduction. In fact, I was actually listening to Dr. Padmaja's presentation as well, and I think my topic as well as the presentation directly flows from there. So it's a kind of logical, I would say, logical flow from there to this particular one. So I hope I'm audible, and is somebody sharing the slides, or should I share?
We're getting slight echo from your system, but it's audible. Can you speak again, please?
Is it better now?
Yeah, I think you can continue. Yeah.
Right. So is somebody sharing the slides?
Vanisha, are you sharing the slide?
Yes, sir, we are sharing the slide.
Yeah, it's not on as yet.
Yeah, just a moment.
No worries. So
Yeah, it's come. Yeah.
yeah. So thank you so much
Screen, I think.
for the opportunity. I think maybe we can go to the first opening slide. So in fact, I mean, what I would be really talking today is sustainable and nutritious food systems. And we discuss a bit about the challenges and strategies. And in fact, quite a bit has been said about it by earlier presenters. Vanisha, if you can go to the first slide, please.
Madam, the echo is coming. I don't know if you can speak without your microphone. Is it better? We can try that out.
Is this better this way?
Yeah, I think this is better. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So, fine. So I mean, that's now I'm better audible. So I'll start my presentation and request Manisha you to go to the first slide. So what we are talking
I'm
about.
sorry to stop you again. I think there's some issue. Either you need to speak close to the microphone. There's some issue coming. There's some echo coming. We're not able to hear you clearly.
Change, but let me just.
Please take your time. No?
Is this better now?
Oh, yes, much better. Thank you so much.
Okay, perfect. So
Yes, perfect.
can we go to the first slide, please?
This is the slide, transforming food systems, the need. Is that the one? Hello? Hello?
I think there's some problem with network connectivity.
Yeah. Just wait.
Yeah.
Manisha, is this the first slide?
Yes, sir. This is the first slide.
Yeah. Just keep it there. Don't change anything. Let her
Yeah.
come back.
It was not the first screen.
Yeah, we can see you now.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Right, thank you so much. So as we were saying, that transformation of food systems has been discussed in various corners for quite some time. Though we all know that UN Food Systems Summit has brought a kind of spotlight on the issue, which is of great importance, and rightly so, because we are talking about not from just the perspective of the humanity, but also from the perspective of the planet. And when we are talking from that perspective, I think the focus on the nutritious food systems that are sustainable is something which is of extreme importance. So when we are talking about food systems, it in fact encompasses everything from food production to processing to packaging, the branding, the budget, the marketing, as well as the farm gate level value addition, etc. And of course, the consumption, which is the most important aspect. So we all know that the food systems are very complex and they have many, in fact, moving parts. If we can go to the next slide, please. So there are many moving parts, and it also includes components such as providing nutritious diets, providing livelihoods, and then contributing to environmental and social benefits. So food systems are major source of livelihoods as well globally. So 1 in 3 workers across the globe are employed in agriculture sector alone, and hence it is everyone's business. We cannot say that, I mean, this is something which actually is just related to one part of population and all. It really encompasses the entire humanity, as I said, and not just the humanity, it is also the planet. So I would just like to draw a bit of your attention to sustainable food systems. And this definition was actually given by Committee on World Food Security, and which actually is quite comprehensive, and it captures the entire gamut of this food system. So it talks about food system that enable food safety. To an extent, I think Dr. Padmaja talked about the quality of the food. Then food security and nutrition for current and future generations. So it talks about not for just the present, but also for the coming years and the coming future. And in accordance with the 3 dimensions, and the 3 essential dimensions are economic, social, and environmental of sustainable development. And we also talk about, whenever the food systems are talked, the essential elements are inclusivity, then equitability, and resilience. So this is something which in fact is an extremely important kind of definition, which needs to be well understood. It just does not talk about food security anymore. It doesn't talk about just the nutrition dimension anymore. It talks about multiple factors that in fact are coming together to form a food security or food systems. And then if we talk about this framework, which in fact I find quite interesting, because if you talk about the food systems, it is like the entire food supply chain. It is also about the entire food production systems, the food environment, which in fact includes the markets, the retailers, the food messaging, how in fact you are really promoting the food, the individual factors, the individual preferences, the aspirations, and also the consumption, the food preparation, and other aspects. So it's quite a kind of comprehensive definition that a sustainable food security has. And so that is quite well captured by these 2 frameworks. And that's where I think it is extremely important to understand the meaning and the coverage of food system when we are talking about sustainable, resilient, nutritious, and gender sensitive or gender responsive food system. Next slide, please. So when we are talking about the sustainable food system, the most important aspect comes when we talk about the challenges. So why there is a need for transforming the food system. So the one aspect, and in fact, there are a lot of discussions around the 3 C's, the changing climate, the conflicts, which were discussed. But there is also one thing which I want to really highlight is the hunger and malnutrition is also rising. So what we have really seen is till 2015, there were some positive trends which were actually seen in overall reduction in hunger, the world hunger, and to an extent also in malnutrition. However, what we have seen is post 2015, there has been a kind of plateau or very slow kind of reduction, or in fact, at times in some of the states, as we have analyzed, the rates are reversed. So it's also, even the malnutrition is on the rise. And so that is in fact a kind of reason where we really have to analyze and understand why those things are happening. And many of the things, actually contributing factors, are mentioned, which are also interrelated. So the rapidly changing climate, mainly the temperature change, the global warming, changing patterns of precipitation, degradation of land resources or degradation of other natural resources as well, and an increased number of extreme events, they all contribute to the food systems and the overall rising hunger and malnutrition. And so we need to really think of what is really wrong and why it really needs transformation, and by transformation, what we really need to do. The third aspect is the social inequalities, and these inequalities can be of multiple forms. It could be the economic development, though it shows the overall progress and overall reduction in poverty. If we see that the growth has not been equal, and so those kinds of inequalities really contribute to a kind of breakdown of the entire food system at times, and then increased conflicts, I think very well elaborated. We can see that, for WFP itself, its investment in the disaster response and all has gone up multifold in recent years. So there is a definite increase in kind of emergencies or humanitarian conditions which need response. So looking at all this and looking at the growing need of the population, because we also know that the population is increasing at an alarming rate still. And probably by end of 2050, we would have around 50 to 100% of increase in the population, and which in fact will have huge demand on the food. And so looking at that, are we really prepared? While it is said that the current trends and the current food production seems to be sufficient for to feed all, but if we want to really adhere to the requirement of, let's say, the recommended quantities of the fruits and vegetables for everyone, if everyone starts consuming that, do we really have adequate production of those nutritious food? And so from that perspective, if we really look at, I think, we really need to reimagine and rethink the narrative that we have. So the assumption that the current systems, given the environment, is actually at equilibrium, it would be sufficient for population to feed a nutritious diet. This itself is a kind of question, I would say. So going to the next slide, please. So in fact, as I said, that it is estimated that around 2/5 of the world's population is unable to afford the healthy diet. So in fact, I talked about different aspects. One is like, if we are talking about transforming food systems to deliver nutrition, we can look at it from two different angles. One is the nutrition perspective and the other one is the climate perspective. I'd like to talk about the nutrition perspective first. So when we are talking about nutrition perspective, the multiple forms of malnutrition are worsening. So one, I said that the hunger is on rise. We talked about increased malnutrition, but when we are talking about malnutrition, in fact, all forms of malnutrition are really becoming more challenging. We see that the stunting rates, the prevalence of stunting, it is like almost stagnant or reducing at a very low rate. In fact, in some states, they have actually shown increase in the prevalence of stunting. The same thing happens with wasting. The number of children who are actually wasted, it is almost stagnant. It's hardly a reduction is there. And the rates at which we have to achieve, if we have to achieve 2030 targets, then what rates are required? I think we are nowhere closer to that. The third thing which is happening is alarming increase in overweight and obesity. And if we actually compare it with 1985, there is almost a kind of doubling of the rates and the numbers of the overweight and obese people. So what we are dealing is like multiple forms of malnutrition, and that actually is really worsening the whole situation and is a kind of big challenge. The second important aspect is healthy diets are not affordable, and we just are reading, and for after around 2005 or so, the rates or the food inflation has really seen huge spikes, and it actually keeps on hovering at a higher level. And so when we are actually talking about a recommended dietary allowance for a balanced diet, how many people would be really able to afford it, and how many would really go for it? So that itself is a kind of big challenge. Inequalities, when we are talking about the structural and systemic, both inequalities are extremely important, and they as well are on the rise. So if we see the indexes on inequalities, if we see the kind of differences which are increasing, while there is a prosperity which is actually being seen in some of the urban pockets and all, at the same time we actually see the pockets of extreme hunger and food insecurity in some. We see overweight and obesity at one place. We also see the undernutrition and extreme stunting at one. So there are lots of such inequalities, and also there are systemic inequalities. So all those actually also are challenges. And the last one I would like to highlight is food safety risks, which are becoming universal. The temperature growth, it has different implications on the entire value chain of the food. So when we are talking about food safety, it is not just the food while we consume, but also the implications on the overall storage and how the food safety and the standards can be really maintained. even in the production, because the natural resources, as we said, are degraded. The temperature and the precipitation actually is changing. So given those kinds of changes, it also has implications on the quality of food that we are consuming. There is also, a world with huge kind of risk, which in fact we are facing, from the pest to the overuse of fertilizers and n number of other things. Also, the preferences, food preferences of people, what is being promoted by many of the companies to make the food really tasty, and use of lot of salt and all that. So that in fact entire issue of nutrition perspective and challenges related to that, and the whole lot of climate perspective challenges from the climate perspective are also there, and so adverse effect on food systems, which in fact are on agriculture and agriculture productivity and livelihoods. So in fact, if we talk about agriculture productivity, we already are seeing that the precipitation patterns, the monsoon, the season, the number of days of rains, there is a huge variation across the, even if we just consider India, across the state, there is a huge variation. So what even if the average rainfall is like normal, the number of rainy days is like reducing, which in fact has huge impact on the productivity, because if you get a rainfall which you are supposed to get over a month in 7 days, that definitely doesn't help the production. So in fact, these kinds of changes are affecting the entire agriculture productivity and livelihoods as well, because as we said, that almost 2/3 of the working population, they are dependent on the agriculture food systems. And so from that perspective, if the climatic factors are affecting that, then naturally livelihoods are affected, and this has direct impact on the food systems. Then affecting diets and nutritional outcomes, as I said, that what we eat, whether that is this, even if I'm eating the same food which I used to eat 25 years back, do I get the same nutrition? What are the kind of diets that are now available, and then what are the kind of policies that actually are promoting certain foods? So, those kinds of the coherence between the climatic perspective and what is being really, consumed as a nutritional diet is something which in fact needs to be looked at. Environmental degradation may be ranging from soil to water to all other aspects is definitely contributing to the overall contribution to food system. And as I said, the impact on the supply chains. And we have already been saying that the extreme events are increasing. So when we are saying it increasing, it is not just in frequency, but also in intensity. And this is happening across the world. The places where there never used to be floods are now flooded. The places which are known for droughts are also getting floods at times. And these kinds of changes in the overall system, they in fact are definitely impacting the supply chains. Whenever there is an extreme event, it has huge impact on the entire food system. It not just disrupts the supply chain, but it also has impact on consumption of the variety of food, the quantity of food, the accessibility of the food, the prices of food. Also, how you really get the food to the people, like the roads might be just blocked, you are just unable to reach. So a lot of implications from the climate perspective on the challenges in transforming the food systems to deliver. Next slide, please. So when we are talking about the next part, I would like to just as a case in point talk a bit about millet value chain. So if we take one value chain, which in fact needs to be a kind of food system that delivers nutrition and is gender responsive, Then looking at a conceptual framework, this conceptual framework, we are working with Niti Aayog for this MEGP initiative. So it talks about the entire value chain, right from production to storage to processing, packaging and branding, distribution and consumption. The outer the circle, which you can see, that is mainly about the enabling factors, and that in fact also forms a part of the food system, because those are factors which in fact directly or indirectly influence the overall sustainability of this food system. So gender and inclusion, of course, institutional commitment and coordination, that is in the form of the government policies, programs, and overall subsidy structures and the kind of promotional incentives which are provided. Then sustainable and innovative financing, to what extent that is available and how that in fact reduces the risk. Then multi-stakeholder partnership. We already have seen this V, and so the food system, when we are talking about it, cannot be just SDG 2. It has to be like definitely talking with multiple SDGs, maybe from poverty to health to clean water and sanitation to gender and multiple others. So from that perspective, it is extremely important to have multi-stakeholder partnerships, and of course the enabling environment for production and inclusion into safety nets, because India is one example which has huge kind of safety net programs like ICDS, MDM or TPDS, which no other country probably has. And so from that perspective, they become an extremely important part of this overall value chain. Next slide, please. So I just also would like to show you a kind of theory of change, which in fact was developed for specifically Odisha Millet Mission, which in fact talks about the barriers and which also talks about the enablers. So if we again take an example of millets, the perception of millets as the poor man's food. And in fact, if we talk about India or any other country, when we are trying to promote some kind of nutritious food, we always have to look at the perceptions and the kind of practices, the kind of barriers, the behavioral barriers, and what those barriers and how those could be addressed. The second barrier, which is actually extremely important, is like, even if that is produced, there are lots of issues about the processing, the farm gate level processing, or the post-harvest losses, the storage facilities, and those kinds of barriers which are related to supply chain. Unless those are really addressed well, those food systems will really never supply. If you don't have easy processing technologies or the mechanization for millets, I think, the drudgery which is involved, and especially on the part of women, is huge. And so that itself is a limiting factor. So somewhere those kinds of barriers as well, they will need to be addressed. And then if you talk about from the policy perspective, are there really the incentives to grow millets, which are in fact comparable to growing other kind of grains or other kind of cereals? So from that perspective, again, you need to weigh like what the policies are talking about. Whereas enablers are, this basically is looked at as a climate adaptive and resilient crop. The government of India has taken lead to really declare the International Year of Millets, or based on the first National Year of Millet. The high nutritive value of millets, though of course there are doubts which are raised from point to point, there is a kind of understanding that they definitely do contain higher nutritive value. And it actually has to have a lot of components, including from policy to really consumption, including production and the other aspects which we talk about. Then we have to clearly define the activities, outcomes, and impact, and how this transformation will really change and how this will really happen. And this kind of mapping, which was done in case of Odisha Millet Mission, was really helping to think about what impact we are trying to really achieve and what we are talking about activities and outcomes. So having the both forward and backward linkages. It doesn't essentially talk only about the systemic level, but also talks about empowering communities and especially women. And that is something which in fact makes this a kind of theory of change that is robust enough. Next slide, please. So based on this analysis and all, so what we have done is we have actually developed various policy briefs and policy pathways. There were 6 kinds of policy briefs which we developed. And many of these policy briefs were actually dealing with multiple issues, which in fact are important from the perspective of millets mainstreaming. So the first and foremost was on how can we include this millets into the supply chain, the safety nets, and how safety nets can be strengthened to make millets a kind of viable option. So in fact, I mean, each of this policy brief, they looked at what is the problem, what are the key challenges, and what could be the policy, what should the policymakers do, or what should be the policy. So right from the problem of recognizing climate resilience of millets and all, there is a kind of resistance to integrate it in the safety nets, including, I mean, at large scale. And then we talk about there are issues which are demand and supply. So, I mean, if one state actually wants to incorporate it into their safety nets, let's say PDS or ICDS, do they have really a supply that will be sufficient to really cater to this demand over a long period of time? And it is on the other side that unless that demand is kind of stationary, you cannot really ask farmers to produce it. Is there a market? And why will they really invest in this? So a low aspirational value of millets, in fact, limits them from the household's menu as well, which in fact is a kind of a major challenge. So recipes and cooking practices, that those are forgotten. And so there are many issues we in fact know, but what really can be done is how do we really introduce the millets in social welfare schemes? And for that, there will be a need for a policy backing. There has to be a balance between the supply and demand of millets, and it is extremely important to make millets as a more of an aspirational food. When we talked about obesity and all, we know that we also talked about increased prevalence of non-communicable diseases. And so looking at that, so promotion of millets as an aspirational food has in fact has been happening in more of the urban localities rather than the rural ones, where it is still looked at as a kind of poor man's diet. And last but not least is also the quality of millets. So there is a need for really investing on processing of the millets and also looking at how the bioavailability of different aspects can be maintained. We also need to see that how the MSP, the minimum support price, can actually cover multiple millets. At this point in time, it is only for a few millets, and especially the minor millets are not really included. So how do we really expand this and ensure that there is enough incentive for different kinds of varieties, which in fact not just adds to the sustainability, biodiversity from the climate perspective, but also adds to the nutritional outcomes, and how that can be done. And that is something which in fact is also extremely important when we are talking about the case of India. Then how the consumption of millets can be really increased. And there, in fact, quite a lot of emphasis needs to be given on branding through social media, raising awareness about nutrition and health facts, participation in the government and private sectors, and how they can be brought on board. When we are talking about different kinds of foods which actually catches the imagination of people, maybe from raggi cookies to pizza bases to noodles to, I mean, whatever, basically, when we are talking about changes in the dietary needs and patterns, how these kinds of initiatives can help. and then how we can decentralize the value-added processing, because that is something which is in fact is required the most, because as I said, that if the changing test competing with the other options, how the nutritious varieties can actually really stand, and how that can really lead to increased consumption. Then strengthening and processing ecosystem for millets, which in fact talks about the overall environment. So how we can even think of natural farming or organic farming, the creation of the certification, how innovative ecosystems can be strengthened. So here, in fact, quite a lot of role is being played by agri-tech companies, and has still a lot of potential to further improve upon it. Bringing in some of the good technologies which are available in the market, and how that in fact can be leveraged for ensuring that the entire food system is strengthened from not just the production, but till consumption. So as they say, that farm to fork. So this is just kind of an example which I wanted to talk a bit more in detail, given millets as a kind of case in point. However, the same thing would apply for, if we talk about vegetables, and how the renewable energies can be used, how, the different ecosystems and different ecosystem-based approaches can be integrated into the overall policy discussion on food systems transformation. Next slide, please.
Madam, you have 2 more minutes, if you don't mind.
Sure, right.
Thank you.
So I guess this is my last slide. So in fact, so basically, what really, I just want to summarize. So the transformation across all dimensions of food security. And when we are talking about all dimensions of food security, the availability we have discussed, access and affordability. So access is like, it can be the physical access, or affordability is an economic access. Consumption is an important aspect, which is not just eating it, but also ability to digest it, its bioavailability, maintaining that, the food safety, the quality and all. And the stability, which is more from the perspective of the stability of the entire ecosystem, entire food system, or the value chain, and how that can be maintained in view of the changing climate. The important second point is coherent actions. And this, in fact, is an extremely important aspect, because the policies, the investment and engagement pathways, they must be coherent. So environmental sustainability and the malnutrition, or addressing the health related issues, they must go hand in hand. And the policy recommendations, or the investments, or the kind of incentives, they should not really be against each other. And so that kind of policy coherence, like if you want to promote a certain kind of nutritious food, there should not be equal or more incentives or subsidies provided to other kind of crops. So across the value chain, you really have to look at a coherence between the climate resilience, agriculture, nutrition, health, and other sectors. The third important aspect that I'll like to highlight as a strategy is revamping the current subsidies and policies around that. And that is something which, in fact, we have seen that for many years we were importing the pulses. However, when the incentive structure changed, we demonstrated that just in a year we can actually become a kind of self-sufficient country. So a lot of those things actually depend on the subsidy structure, specifically when it comes to India. And so the focus should be healthy food that takes care of planet as well. Then the changing behaviors and shaping markets. So we know that most of our taste and consumption, it is largely determined by how the market messages and how and what is really being promoted and advertised. So from that perspective, how do we really change the behaviors, and how do we really shape the market, which in fact also become part of the food system and promote the nutritious and sustainable food systems. And last but not the least, I would say that multi-stakeholder approach, which is extremely transparent and evidence-based, which in fact helps in really fixing the clear accountabilities across the board. So that is, I think, my last slide. And then, of course, I have references. So I'd like to stop there, and thanks for the opportunity and patient listening. Over to you, Dr. Saikat.
Thank you, Dr. Pradnya, for the excellent and very, very detailed presentation. And I think now we have a better understanding of what are the elements which are required to bring in the food systems transformation. And you clearly explained that it is not only the nutrition perspective, but that climate perspective, which is, if which is not considered, will not actually bring about that much required change and direction to what we are heading towards. And of course, you talked about that it should be looked at as a livelihood changing approach, and rather than isolation, and everybody needs to be part of it, and the policy makers and other stakeholders, and of course, a convergence model or a convergence approach needs to be taken. So I'm sure there would be some questions, and I would request you to be there for some more time. And we look forward to some discussions and questions to you. Thank you again. And now I would request, and we have been waiting for a long time, and in fact, Dr. Jacob has been waiting for a long time. Thank you, sir. Yours is the keynote address, and I think we discussed this. We said we'll keep it for the end. Thank you for your patience, and over to you, Dr. Jacob, for telling us as to how we could leave no one behind and then weave everyone, wind to the Eat Right movement. So over to you. We eagerly look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Dr. Datta. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you're loud and clear, sir.
Great. So my thanks to ICRISAT and the organizers for this kind invitation. Of course, I will be speaking largely on the Eat Right movement, which is very close to the heart of FSSAI. FSSAI, being a regulatory body, is also being a facilitator to encourage the society and the people, telling them about the right kind of food or nutrition that is to be taken, so that we can all live, much longer and be productive. Let me share my screen first, and then I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, your screen is visible, but yeah, the presentation is coming up.
And is it the full screen?
Not yet.
No?
Yeah, this is good to go.
I'm good to go. Let me minimize. A lot of buttons are there. I guess it should not lead to. Okay, perfect. No, how to go back? Yeah, perfect. So, well, the theme for this year's World Food Day is leave no one behind. That means not a single person should be left out in attaining food security as well as food safety. And rightly pinpointed by the chair speaker, that the farmers need to be acknowledged for their valuable contribution, because there are a handful of farmers left, and which is feeding the entire world. So definitely that's a very great, efforts that every farmer is doing. And this World Food Day definitely should acknowledge their valuable contribution that they are giving and feeding the world. Well, I thought, we are all speaking about food, but let me understand what is a food. Then we will come to, a bit on the food safety aspect and the food security aspect and how it can be linked to the Eat Right India movement. The word food comes from an old English word, fodder. You might have heard the word fodder, which means to feed or fuel. So food literally means fuel for our body. So if the right fuel is going, that means it is nutritive and non-nutritive. Now, non-nutritive here, it reflects the water. It is, meant to give energy, stimulate growth, and maintain life. So that's the purpose of food. We eat food every day, morning, evening, munching. So definitely food is a part and parcel of life. Without food, we cannot live. That's a fact. And as per the Food Safety and Standard Act, food also legally is defined as any substance, whether processed, partially processed, or unprocessed, which is intended for human consumption and includes primary food to the extent defined in the clause genetically modified or engineered food, or food containing ingredients, infant food, packaged drinking water, alcoholic drink, chewing gum, and any substance. So legally, all the blue font, what you are seeing on the screen, are supposed to be food, while the red fonts are still not under the purview of food as per the FSSAI Act. So the red fonts are the plant prior to harvesting, drugs, medicinal products, cosmetics, narcotics, or psychotropic substances. So that's the legal way which the Act is defining the food. But in a layman's term, it is the fuel, or it is something which nourishes us. And with food, once the food is produced, whether it is coming from the farm or from the animal, challenges come. Some are, coming from outside, some are intrinsic, like the allergens, even the foodborne microorganism, invisible in nature, but they can lead a lot of toxins and trails, which lead to discomfort, even deaths. There are certain microorganisms like salmonella or listeria, which can create a lot of challenges, or even including death to humans. Plant disease, of course, coming in the food system through unprotected quarantine, and sometimes it can come in the production, and it again can create a challenge. Sanitation, quality, of course, if you're not maintaining that in the factory, in the manufacturing plant, then definitely it can compromise. Allergens, it's intrinsic. There are allergens identified in wheat, like gluten. You have the shrimp, you have some people are allergic to egg, etc. Soya bean, peanut. There are some examples. GMO, some countries have accepted it, some countries are still having debate and have not accepted yet, and India has not yet accepted. So there are discussions and things going on this issue. And of course, the residues which is coming from the farm, like pesticide, insecticides, antibiotics, heavy metals, etc., can also be causing challenges. So in the FSSAI regulations, we have listed out certain contaminants which come unintentionally. You have two challenges. One is unintentionally, so heavy metals, crop contaminants. I'm not reading all this thing, but these are also available in our website. Naturally occurring toxic substances, pesticide residues. In fact, the FSSAI has banned more than 20 pesticide, has set the antibiotic tolerance limit. Then the PCBs, the PAH, the biotoxins coming from fish and fishery products, and other contaminants, which also come as part of the adulteration, like melamine and histamine, which is again, coming intrinsically from the fish and fishery products. Another concern, is intentional things that is happening is the food fraud, which can be by means of substitution, dilution, counterfeiting, overruns, unapproved enhancement, mislabeling, tampering, gray market or theft, or introducing some adulterant, contaminant for purpose. So food fraud, involves three elements. intention, deception, and undue advantage that gives to the food fraud. So when I see the food risk metrics, one is unintentional, which can also, based on the food quality and food safety, while food fraud and food defense are more intentional in nature. And the main purpose, the motivation behind is gain and harm in terms of food fraud and food defense respectively. So we need to have some strategies, and countries have adopted it. Like we have for food quality and food safety, we have the HACCP, hazard analysis critical control point. And then we have for food fraud, especially economic related, we have the VASP, vulnerable analysis critical control point, and the HACCP, which is the threat analysis critical control point. So how we can ensure safe food? It can be by means of good checks, good cleaning, separation or segregation once it is in the factory, to avoid the cross-contamination, cooking, like sterilization, pasteurization, a lot of science is involved, chilling, and also good disposal of, food. So, when I link food safety and food security, they both are, two sides of the coin, but none is superior or inferior. Both go hand in hand. And food safety challenges start right from the production till it reaches the consumer. You see, there is a chain, supply chain that is involved, like process, distribution, retail, etc. While food security, thrives on four pillars: availability, access, stability, and utilization. So what does it mean? Availability means that the sufficient quantity of appropriate and quality food is available for domestic production, commercial imports, food assistance, or for food reserve on a consistent basis. That is available. It should be available all the time, like even the season, if it is, there is a drought or challenges, it should be available. It should be also stable. There should not be any hindrance or shortage in the times of emergency, flood, or anything. It should reach to the people, and it should be accessible. That means, the first SDG talks about zero hunger. So it should be access. Every person in the world should have access to appropriate food, and utilization, through proper storing and processing practices, where we apply sufficient knowledge, and then you have to store in the right way. I'll also touch upon here, there are two concepts, food loss and food waste, which do happen. Food loss is decrease in the quantity or quality of food, which is ultimately not eaten by the people, and then it leads to the nutritional value, economic value, and food safety. I mean, it is reflected in those aspects. While food waste refers to discarding or alternative use of food that was fit for human consumption, but it was not really taken by the humans. So food waste versus loss, I would say, you did not purposefully take it. You felt it is a bit, not the right, so you threw it away, or it got expired, or even some of the food that is thrown out at the hotel and restaurants or at home. So this is literally, it is very prevalent, and it happens when the edible food is discarded prematurely or unnecessarily. This is generally, common in high income countries, also now, occurring in India. where in some marriage party or in some this thing, a lot of food gets wasted. While food loss is due to some kind of challenges, mainly climatic, like drought, storm, or some pest attack, or there was lack of storage, post-harvest technologies that we could not put to store the food, and that led to the loss. So interestingly, when we see who is responsible for such food waste, it is we. That means most of the waste, in one of the study, it was found 44% waste, food waste is coming from the residents, while other contributors are the restaurants, grocery, institutional, and the industry. So that's the reason we have this SDG 12, which speaks of responsible consumption and production. And what does the responsible production means? It should mean it identify the hotspots in the value chain, minimize the carbon emission at all stages, utilize the renewables. So there are, lists I'm not going to read here. These are all available in the net. While the responsible consumption is low environmental impact, or buy those things which are non-toxic and which can, help the local farmers. We always say buy local. In fact, our Honorable Prime Minister is very vocal for local. So that's the reason in FSSAI also we have Eat Sustainable. I will be telling once we are touching the Eat Right India pillars. So this is also and it should be ethical and morally driven. So when I see the scenario of food grain production, of course, right from 2005, now we are in 2022. I just got the statistics of 2018, where it gives the bifurcation of what exactly is 285. You can see here 285.21 for 18-19. So rice is the major, food grain being produced, followed by wheat and other pulses. So definitely, we have come right from 208 till 285, which is good. But again, when we see the population, this also is growing. It was, what was there in 2.5 in 2005, the population has increased abundantly. So there is, we need to work it out how we can increase food production. In fact, one scenario, we do produce good amount of food. Since being a horticulturist, my subject is fruit science. So I thought I'll just, touch upon, we do have a large number of fruits and vegetables, and we are number 2 in the world in terms of production. The advantage of India is, diverse agroclimatic zones, easy port access, liberalization, subsidies, all those things are helping us. We can produce any kind of fruit, whether it is temperate, tropical, or subtropical. And the sad part is we lose a lot of fresh produce due to improper post-harvest management. So this is nothing but the loss, food loss. And one study, gave an approximation what UK is consuming, that is what India is losing. So the question is, why there is a scantness in the land of surplus? In fact, when the previous speaker was speaking about the nutritional security, the per capita availability is too high. In fruits, it's close to 200, and in vegetable, it is again double, 401 in one study. But what we are eating is less than the recommended dietary allowance, what has been prescribed per person per day of 100 gram. or 300 gram of vegetable, the India is consuming 46 and 130. So that is a bit sad. So we need to also improve the post-harvest strategies to at least save the fruits and vegetable. And since they are very nutritive in nature, highly nutritionally dense, food products. So there has to be some good strategy. Well, I was speaking about the food grain or the fruits and vegetable. We see that the population has risen over the years to 1.3. Now it has also crossed 1.3. The good thing, I would say, there is a decline in the population growth rate, which is presumed that by 2050 or so, India will have negative population. But 2050 is a long way. And definitely the population is growing up, and there is a concern, and food loss and food waste, both are very crucial. And it is, every person should give a sincere effort to minimize this kind of losses, so that the population, no one should feel hunger or should have their food at least 2 times or 3 times a day. Food safety, hazard will be there, always will be there. It's just like this scenario. So I cannot control the hazard. It can come in the form of physical, it can come in the form of chemical hazards, it can come in the form of biological hazard or radiological hazard. And this hazard, if it is directly exposed, it gives a risk. And ultimately it leads to, food loss, food waste, all these things are interrelated. So we need to have a prevention, which can be through, GAP, GMP, that means good agriculture practice, good manufacturing practice, good hygiene practice, hazard analysis critical control point, threat analysis critical control point, vulnerable analysis critical control point, preventive control followed in the US FDA, Food Safety and Standard Act and Regulation, Codex Alimentarius. So all such things in combination, when we use, to a greater extent, we can minimize food safety risk. While food security, we need to respect our planet. I would say we are responsible for this flood, drought, pest, pollution. So once we control that, once we take away the bad environment and follow good agriculture practice, good production, improved technology, and a sense of no food wastage and food loss and sustainable consumption, so to a greater extent we can solve the food security challenges. Now a bit on the food safety, what Food Safety and Standard Authority of India is doing. It came in 2006 by the Act of Parliament. And in 2008, the FSSAI was established to take care of the Act and its implementation. And in 2011, the regulations started coming, and I would say the operationalization happened in 2011 onwards. So under this, every food business operator or manufacturer, they need to have the license or register with FSSAI. Something like a person who want to drive on the road, his car or scooter or bike, they need to have a license, a vehicle license. So something like that, we also are enforcing all the food business operator to have either registration or license. And FSSAI work on science-based standard with the main purpose to regulate the manufacture, storage and distribution, sale and import of food, to bring safe and wholesome food for human consumption. And all the acts, it was not that India did not have orders and act, it was there. But in 2006, what happened, all the previous orders and act were all brought together in one umbrella, because various ministries were involved. And for that matter, they were all brought in single umbrella, and the act was formed. And now the good advantage is it is having the integrated line of command It follows on strategic issue, not only adulteration, but also substandard, food, if it is of low quality. So definitely strategic issue. We promote self-compliance. As one of the speaker was telling, food safety is everyone's business. So we entrust, the food business operators to be self-compliant and be responsible. And of course, if anything goes wrong, then there are graded penalties and disposal of cases. Licensing is also happening through a single window by name FOSCOS, and consumer education through FOSTAC, and there are different training programs that FSSAI gives, and we are consistent also with the global measures like Codex Alimentarius. So who are covered in the Act, right from not only the manufacturer, but the transporter, the wholesaler, retailer, hotels, everyone is involved. What we say is anyone who is doing the manufacture, processing, packaging, storage, transportation, distribution, imports of food, they all fall under the, they all need to have, registration or license. So briefly, the Act consists of 12 chapters. And we have, said the general principle of food safety and special responsibilities of food business operators and the offenses and penalties. All things are well defined. And FSSAI, generally works on 4 pillars. We have, as I said, we believe in science. So scientific panels are there, which, the deliberation goes to the scientific committee and ultimately to the food authority, which provides scientific and technical advice to the central and state government in the matters of framing the policies, which can have a direct bearing on the food safety and nutrition. While Central Advisory Committee is a state-center relation where many of the states, have food safety commissioners. So at least once in 4 months or 3 months, or 4 times in a year, the Central Advisory Committee meets. In FSSAI, there are different division. I would say the key division are the science, regulation, quality assurance, regulatory compliance, and the number 8, social behavioral change, which focus on the Eat Right and other initiatives, while others are all supporting division. In the region also, we have, a different region. I head the South, and we also have offices at all these places. Of course, the regional office of FSSAI deals with the food safety of, licensing, import clearance, and Eat Right initiatives. So coming to the, panels, there are different panels. Like horizontal panel. Horizontal panel is you can apply in all kinds of food category, while vertical panel is specific to that particular food, like fish and fish product, milk and milk product. So altogether, we have 21, panels as on date, and 22 regulations. So all this regulations started, coming right from 2011. Like the licensing, registration. So most of these regulations, what are you seeing on your screen, are focusing on food safety aspects. While there is one regulation which I had bolded here, is something, also touch upon the food security, recovery and distribution of surplus food, which was brought in 2019. What this Act, 2009, this surplus food, what does it speaks of, is that, almost 10.04% of the world food production, India is giving the contribution, but still, 196 million people are undernourished, which is second highest in the world. And even it is echoing what the previous speakers had spoken about, the stunting and hungerness. So thinking all this aspect, this particular regulation came into. And then, this under this regulation, there is a network that has been created, Indian Food Sharing Alliance network, which, if anyone who is having excess food, maybe after a marriage or a party, they can call this. There is a toll-free number given, which you can call, and they will come and pick your food. Of course, you have to follow certain norms, good packaging, and when it was manufactured, all those declaration has to be given when you are giving those food. So guidance documents are there, distribution agencies are there, food business and association beneficiaries, all are there as the stakeholders. Now, how FSSAI is involved in the improving the health of the nation? In fact, the triple burden which was touched upon by the second speaker who invited us, we are not really good, because when we see our ranking, India is 102 out of the 117 country under nutrition, micronutrition, and overnutrition. So I would say three extremes, going in three different ways, and that's the reason Eat Right India had come up. The vision of Eat Right India is to bring safe and nourishing food that is environmentally sustainable for everyone. So leave no one behind. So it is everyone. You can see everyone is there. So we don't want to leave anyone behind, and we feel that safe and secure food is a right for everyone, and it's not a privilege. So India, it represents 1/5 of the world population, and 800 million population is dependent on the public distribution system. And we have so many food business operators and many unlarged, this is a scenario what is currently there in the Indian food distribution and the manufacturing system. And of which, mainly the unsafe food, unhealthy lifestyle, diets, environmental degradation, all these things, are giving all these numbers, like 100 million foodborne diseases are happening as per the WHO. 6 of the top 10 risk factors for burden of disease are in India, which is food related. India represents more than 40% of the global underweight. Again, a reference given by the GNR, and half of the Indian population consumes less than 50% of the daily needs like iron, zinc, vitamin, which are really essential. Overweight have been doubled in the last decade for both men and women, and 40% of the food produced in India is wasted. Again, lakhs or crores of rupees are being just going into the drain. So, that's the reason, sensing that this kind of challenges is going to cost the money in terms of $15 billion, as well as the cases which is going to burden us. And that's a thing. It was thought FSSAI, being a regulatory body, let's also become a facilitator to educate the people. Again, I am listing out, the non-communicable disease, 60% death, or hypertension that is happening in every 1 in 4, 1 in 5, anemia in children, in women of productive ages. So all these things are leading to economic burden. And that's the reason, since FSSAI main objective is to ensure safe and wholesome food. So we have food standards and safe practice, food testing, which is dealt largely by the quality assurance, food safety compliance, which is dealt by the licensing and registration of the regulatory compliance division, and training and capacity building. Again, we have a training division. So what is the mantra of Eat Right India movement? It is eat safe, eat healthy, and eat sustainable. So it's a collective effort. The movement is a collective effort of all stakeholders, which is led by the FSSAI to transform the Indian, ecosystem of the country to ensure safe, healthy, and sustainable food for everyone through a judicious mix of regulatory and supply demand initiatives. So what does it eat safe? The three pillars. What does it mean? Eat safe means, you make your personal and surrounding hygiene clean, and gives, sanitation, because food microorganism is a big challenge. Cross contamination can happen. Combating adulteration, eliminate the toxic residues like pesticide, antibiotics, heavy metals into the food, and prevent hazards of using used cooking oil. Even many times, the polar compounds increase, significantly or substantially when it is being fried over 10 cycle, 15 cycle. So that also can be harmful to the body. Then eat healthy is balanced diet, diet diversification, less use of, salt, sugar, saturated fat, eliminate the industrial trans fat, and eat a lot of fortified staple. While eat sustainable, as I mentioned, eat local, seasonal, no food waste, reduce, recycle, conserve water, and reduce the chemicals in food chain. So the tagline, the Eat Right India movement is a large-scale effort to transform the country's food system, which I had already mentioned. The tagline is Sahi Bhojan Behtar Jeevan, means right food, better life. And it is aligned to all the policies like the National Health Policy, even the Poshan Abhiyan, Anemia Book Bharat, Swachh Bharat Mission, etc. Even we have done a lot of social media campaigning in movie theater. Our brand ambassadors are the Bollywood star Rajkumar Rao, who always has given encouragement to the public. Go step by step little, mainly salt, sugar, and fat. Aaj se thoda kam. That's a Hindi phrase which encourages the consumer to gradually decrease the consumption of salt, sugar, and fat, and at the same time also helping the manufacturer to reformulate the product. So a lot of posters are there in all the vernacular language I have shown here in English. Other effort is to eliminate the trans fat, which is bringing bad cholesterol, lowers good cholesterol. Researchers have proven that it is linked to heart disease, overweight, obesity, diabetes, and other types of cancer. And generally, vanaspati, margarine, bakery. So FSSAI also has brought regulation, like from January 2022, the trans fat level should not go beyond 2%. So posters are there, education materials like where trans fats can be found, why they are bad, how to control, all such. So there are different initiatives of FSSAI. One is the FOSTAC, one is the cluster certification, one is the Bhog, Eat Right Station, hygiene rating, meat shop, hygiene rating for restaurant, meat shop, sweet shop, building consumer awareness, Eat Right campus for the colleges, Eat Right school, addressing the adulteration. We have given food safety on wheels, or FSW, what popularly known as our mobile food testing lab, to every states. Even now we are trying to increase the numbers to every district. A lot of books are there, free of cost. You can download from our website, like the DART book, which tells about the adulteration, how you can detect. Food safety magic box also being supplied to the schools. It is also available in the government portal for buying. A lot of guidance note, mythbusters. So many initiatives are there which address training and capacity building, benchmarking, certification, building consumer awareness, addressing the adulteration, enabling healthy choices, and of course, sustainable initiatives like Safe Food, Share Food, RUCO is reused cooking oil. So we take, the whole of society, the business, the consumer organization, the food and nutrition professional, policymakers, youth, scientists, farmers, everyone together, in this fold. This also covers, sustainable development 4 and 7, which we believe partnership is very vital if we want to achieve the all the SDGs by 2030. And of course, that can be done through quality education. And the whole government, effort, which speaks, different institutions, state, government, even consumer organizations, everyone is involved with this 4-pillar of food standard, value chains, choices, and environment. As I'm again echoing or quoting the Honorable Prime Minister's word, "Sabka Saath, Sabka Prayas." It has to be sincere prayas, not just a prayas, but a sincere effort. Then we can think of achieving food security and food safety. That is the best vikas. And the whole government involved the inter-ministerial engagement. We have programs for the district, smart cities, and challenges for the school. Why school has been taken, because we believe that right from the school, the children, they get enrolled. Let us teach them about the sustainable ways, good food eating habit, hygiene, or don't waste food, so that ultimately the generation, when it grows and become adult, they will be responsible people. So this is one of the way to train, get into the schools. And as I said, the Eat Right India follows 5 action point: regulatory framework, training and capacity building, benchmark certification, and nudging food business and social and behavioral change. So when we see here, what is number 1, which is regulatory framework. So most of the food safe standard in terms of pesticide, antibiotics for different food products have been set. We also have strengthened the food testing laboratory. It's not just mere food testing laboratory, but should be an accredited food laboratory, NABL. That is one of the benchmark that we have set. It should meet the ISO 17025. Then front of pack labeling for high fat, sugar, and salt food, elimination of trans fat by setting up the limit, and standards have been set for the fortified food. While for the second part, which is how we are doing the capacity and training building. So we train the food handlers in both organized and unorganized sectors. We train the frontline health workers, and over 5 lakh people have been trained as food safety supervisors have been trained. Then it also covers training or Eat Right campus, that covers places, hospital, education institution, jails. In fact, some months back, one jail in Uttar Pradesh, they became 8 police stations. And these are the numbers. As on September, we are slowly catching up. Number of schools that have been registered, number of schools that have been certified, how many children are health and wellness ambassadors for this Eat Right. So this numbers speak that they are gaining up. And we also, that was for the individual approach, but we also have the cluster approach, which emphasize on eat safe. So we have the clean street food hub, where the thing is like any open market. We generally improve the quality of street vending to the level of food courts and established hotel and restaurant, while preserving their rich culinary heritage. And 76 have been certified till date. Then we also have a framework for clean and fresh fruit and vegetable market to address safety and hygiene issue, especially in the unorganized fresh fruit and vegetable market. Again, 64 has been certified. For religious places, temples, gurudwaras, we have the Bhog, blissful hygiene offering to God. That's an acronym. And 755 places of worship has been certified. And stations are also catching up in South. We are on a very massive drive. In fact, if you see my LinkedIn page, many have been awarded recently, right from Visakhapatnam, Bangalore, Mysore is coming up. So many enrollments have been done to promote safe, healthy, and sustainable food in all the railway stations. And another one, which is action point, which we are seeing, is reduction of fat, sugar, salt in the food item, and also Save Food, Share Food campaign, which I had already mentioned, RUCO, and no plastic wastage in the beverage sector. How we are involving at the government level, every district, we have been giving Eat Right Challenge, Eat Smart City Challenge. At the society level, we don't say indigenous, but we say, since it is Indian origin, indigenous millet recipes. So all such, education through fun, through game, through contest, through challenges, through Eat Right Melas and games. We try to, give the message to adopt a healthy lifestyle through eating right food. At society level, even at the institutional level, we had this fat-free cooking challenge, or focus on local and seasonal food, balanced diet on millet, door-to-door engagement, etc. So what we are seeing way forward, as a way forward, we are looking for Eat Right Steering Committee, where an inter-ministerial committee to review and provide oversight and guidance to Eat Right India program. And also the Food Safety Index, which already, 2 years we have done it. This year, Tamil Nadu was #1. So we encourage and we tell the fact to the state, which state is doing better in Food Safety Index. And of course, MOUs have been signed where financial assistance is also being provided by the center through FSSAI to support the states for strengthening the food safety system. Now, strengthening of food safety system can be through lab or infrastructure, through trainings, through education, etc. So trans fat elimination, I already mentioned, the limits or the regulation has come and limits have been set right from January 2022. But ultimately, we want 100% elimination of trans fat. Then recycling of plastic packaging to reduce plastic footprint in food regulation to recycle. So again, the regulation had come. Then vegan food regulation, Ayurveda, Ahar. So they all, is reflecting to the sustainability. We also have different, connects, or I would say, when you see visit our website, we have the FOSCOS, which has replaced an old FLRS and has become more simpler, comprehensive, and educative, or give education also for any food business operator who want to register or take license. So that is the FOSCOS. For the importers, we have the FIX, that is also going good. For lab, we have the InfolNet, which is the Indian Food Laboratory Network, where every lab, whenever they do the testing, they need to register the result. They need to register what is their manpower. They need to register what are the equipments they are using. So it gives, gives an insight. We can also do at the center some desktop surveillance based on the lab report through InfolNet portal. Phoscorus app is an integrated digital platform which is generally used by the food safety officers for inspection, sampling, monitoring, data collection, data analysis on real-time. So these are some of the technologies, or I would say apps, which are facilitating to ensure food safety in the system. And then, of course, the food safety app is also there, which provides all relevant information pertaining to food standard, notified labs, etc. So another, thing I thought I'll touch upon is, as part of the Eat Right, is the food fortification, where major key staple fortified food like the oil, milk, rice, wheat flour, salt, processed food, fruit juice, all have been covered because they are largely being taken. So that's the reason we thought this would be the best way to reach, micronutrient to bring down the deficiency of micronutrient like zinc or vitamin B, vitamin C, vitamin A, D. All those things can be done through this staples. So a lot of sensitization trainings are happening, and we do train Recently, we conducted one awareness program in Pondicherry on fortified food. So there are certain apprehension we are, or myths. We are trying to remove that from the public, and just to encourage that, go for this plus F fortification. So for fortified milk, oil, since they are fat soluble, so vitamin A and D can be fortified. While for other flours and rice, even salt, iron, iodine has been added. Even for rice, it is the iron, folic acid, and vitamin B12. So this is also aligned. In fact, in the last speech of Honorable Prime Minister during the Independence Day of 2000, fortification should go, in full length and full scale by 2024. So we are also aligned, and for that reason, it is this particular program has been aligned to the ICDS midday meal scheme and public distribution. Then, as many have already said, 2023 is the year of millet. We consider this as the Nutri cereals of the future. And for that reason, we because it has a lot of nutrition like ragi and all, calcium, a lot of minerals, and the best part is the fiber, which also is not going through the other staple food like wheat and rice. Many of us are taking the polished rice or fiberless wheat like maida and all. So that's the reason millet is a very good alternative. The good advantage is that it can be cooked very fast. It doesn't require a lot of time. And you have diversity. You have finger millet, barnyard, foxtail, and ICRISAT, in fact, is doing a very good job. Has come out with a lot of good varieties, which is really appreciable. And we are doing the promotion of millet through social media engagement, broadcasting, and of course, books has been released like Indigenous Food Challenge, Recipe, Ravivar, and things like that. Lastly, I thought I'll also touch upon, as part of the Eat Right, we are again, very similar to the approach of the American system, where they have the Andy score, where they are saying unlimited way you should consume vegetables, fruits, beans, legumes, while you should limit daily whole grain, raw nut seed, while as the pyramid go or narrows down, it should be on twice a week or once a week or rarely. So that is how Dr. Joel had created Andy score, and he classified. He also worked out and gave a score for each fruits, vegetables, and food product. So what you can see on your left is really nutritionally dense food, while like cola, French fries, white potato doesn't have much good score. I mean, they are more starchy food. So more fibrous, more vitamin, good food has to be taken. And this is what is Eat Right plate is also reflecting. When you see the logo of Eat Right, you can see the green border or the of the plate. It is also saying consume liberally. That means fruits and vegetables should be eaten liberally, while animal products have to be eaten moderately. Milk has to be taken plenty and sparingly. So based on you can see the pie, the distribution which is larger and which is lower, and then a lot of plenty of water. That is the right diet. And this also, the Ministry of Food Processing Industry also has given a plate how a diet should look like. So 500 grams of fruits and vegetables, 90 grams of pulses, 300 grams of yogurt, fat, and things. So that is how the plate should be designed. And I'll just share the success story, how we are involving everyone, why it is a people's movement, because we also did in 2008 one cycle yatra, connecting all. You can see the map here. Every region of the country, this campaign, Eat Right campaign, was done. A large participation was done, which was complemented also by the Honorable Prime Minister in Man Ki Baat in December 2018. So we also have done, walkathon. In fact, last year when India was celebrating 75 years of independence. So we also came with the mandate that in 1 year, we should organize 75 Eat Right Mela, Walkathon, etc. And we exceeded that 75. In fact, the response was more. A lot of colleges, public institutions, they all came. You can see here in one of the picture, it is also through game, like the snake and ladder, where dice is rolled. So if it is a junk food, if it falls there, the student have to roll back to the so if it goes, dice goes to the good food, like some fibrous vegetable, millet, then they can climb up. So likewise, a lot of initiatives are there, melas are there. We also achieved a world record in Pondicherry recently, where we got a lot of endorsement on thumb impression, what was made by the public. So all those things you can see in my LinkedIn page. What I wanted to say, that the Sustainable Development Goal 1, 2, 3, 6, 12 are have direct bearing for food safety and security, and our goal is to have a good partnership if we want to really attain people, planet, partner, peace, and prosperity. I mean, this 5 P's, what the ultimate, the UN or any agency is working upon, is to get this 5 P, and that can be done through a good partnership involving 1, 2. I mean, every sector should not be ignored. So the key takeaways, I would say, in fact, that's my acronym: safe and nutritionally underlined food are essential for human health and well-being. So please don't ignore. Safe and nutrition has to be the mantra, because I said food is fuel. So food has to be taken. If you put a wrong fuel in a car, like kerosene in a petrol car, do you expect the car to run, or a diesel in a petrol car? It doesn't run. So it has to be safe and nutritionally underlined food. So a lot of, India is really blessed to have so much of potential unexploited fruits and vegetables that really need to be, have some R&D and evolve as a recipe, common recipe, or as a staple that should be promoted. Food safety and security, go hand in hand. Both are equally important. So I won't say one is head, one is tail. No, both are hand in hand. Adopt a sustainable consumption pattern. Eat nutritionally dense food. I already mentioned that. And encourage nature-friendly food production, and employ equitable livelihood. Now, this program ODOP, I did not mention, but you can see there is a dedicated website where, equal livelihood, because if everyone focus on one particular product, there is the imbalance. So this particular approach of one district, one product is a good approach that promotes equitable livelihood. Food safety is based on science, so please apply it always. One Health approach, WHO, FAO, everyone is speaking on that improves food safety. So please, we need to adopt it. Eat right to be all right. Never waste food in haste. Many people, they waste the food because they don't have time to eat, and that ultimately that food is going into the drain, and that could have gone to someone else's plate. So whenever I would say, kindly serve your own food rather than someone serving your food, because you are the right person who knows what amount of food that I need to take. Eat safe, eat healthy, and eat sustainable. I already mentioned that. And of course, safe food can shape us good. Believe in that. And it also gives a feel-good humanhood. So good food is everyone's right. It's not a privilege. And again, as the theme goes, leave no one behind and leave no stone unturned, because food safety and security is a people's movement. So everyone has to be taken together. And thank you very much. I would like to also mention that there are websites, dedicated for eatrightindia.gov.in. Even ICRISAT can also become a Eat Right campus. I would encourage ICRISAT to come forward and register as an institution. Many of the IITs have done it. So you can also register. We also have for the fortification resource center. Again, there is a portal. And of course, in FSSAI website, you can find all the regulations, all the activities pertaining to science and standards, pertaining to laboratory, adulteration, all those things are being given. So thank you, everyone, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jacob. I think your name, Sanu, has been really understood by us today, and your message. And I thought we were really lucky to have you today. And I think one thing you have told us is that leave no one behind theme is probably something which India has already adopted a long time back. Whatever you told us today, it shows that we have already done the right things, and probably after discussions here, we would probably be able to further sharpen those strategies as we move along. So thank you so much for your detailed presentation and telling us about rising population and then how to make food more affordable and accessible, reduce post-harvest losses and other strategies, food loss, food wastage. So many aspects you have touched, and of course the Eat Right movement. One question which I would like to quickly put to you, and it's not a question, but I just wanted to know, you talked about so many regulations, and with the International Year of Millets, and myself being a food scientist, I'm finding it a challenge as to what is a millet-based food. 5%, 2% millet is called a millet biscuit in the market. So where do we go and how do we sort of work together to make sure that we have certain millet regulations as we move on to the International Year of Millets 2023? That's one question from me, and thereafter I open the forum for Q&As. I think after that, Dr. Victor would like to come in with some questions. So over to you.
Yeah, I mean, we do have, mixed millet flour, which is means where the millets are blended or grinded and blended, and and we have, set standards. So those millets or pseudo millets could be jawar or sorghum, could be bajra or pearl millet or finger millet or ragi, foxtail, everything. And we have set limits, like what should be the moisture, the limit, if I'm not wrong, it should be not more than 11%. What should be the ash content? It should be not beyond 0.15. Protein, how much?
But Dr. Jacob, just my question was specifically for the consumer end. When a consumer goes to the market, and then there are so many millet-based products, and sometimes it's a challenge to have a millet product, maybe a biscuit or a cake or a cookie which has 100% millets, and then when we pick up the packet, we see that it's only 5% millet or 2% millet, and it's still called a millet cookie. So in that aspect, I think this is something which a consumer is looking forward to have some regulations in place, and especially a product developer like me to actually ensure that the consumer benefits, because sometimes we see that a 2% millet cookie is also labeled as good for diabetics. So that's where I'm coming from. Yeah.
I mean, I do agree, totally agree on that. I'm not sure whether any regulation, but we do have, the labeling regulations where it is clearly mentioned. The label should reflect the product. That means if you are speaking, we do have, regulations like some people, they will put real fruit juice or fresh fruit juice in their package, though it is not fresh. So they have to put a disclaimer, which is mandatory as per the labeling guidelines. So I don't know whether that is being followed or not, but yes, if a regulation is required, of course, you can all put, as a question to the scientific panel as an agenda that can be taken up, and ultimately it can be brought as a regulation. But
yeah, I think there is a requirement in the millet space. I think we can approach you separately and then and we seek your guidance on that. Over to you, Dr. Victor. I thought you had something in mind to ask maybe to some of the panelists. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Saikat. I think it's really a very interesting discussion cutting across all the various sectors. Yeah, I had a specific question for Dr. Jacob Sanu. So yeah, I mean, leaving no one behind, and I think you gave a very comprehensive overview, touch on all aspects, food security, nutrition security, safety aspect, and all the regulations, combining it with the Eat Right India movement. So I think basically everything was covered. Now, one of the challenges that practically we see that I think you have all the regulations, and of course we did see that, is that some of these food business operators or entrepreneurs put on food claims or labels on their products, but some of these claims have not been validated, or they may not necessarily be the right claims, like maybe this percentage of protein or percentage of millet that as per required may have been indicated on the label, may not necessarily be because they may not have the right scientific validation. You might probably have done in earlier times, but on a day-to-day production basis, this may not be the case. So the question I have is that how do you go about, I know you have the law enforcement, but how do you go about implementation, and how do you check to ensure that this is minimized or completely eradicated? Thanks.
I mean, the label claim, I would say we have a separate process for the claims. We have a claim approval committee. So ideally, if any FBO wants to, do a claim, they have to approach that particular committee and give in their application with full documentation, clinical studies, and how it is, they need to satisfy that particular committee, and then they can, get the claim. So legally, a claim, you cannot put on the label as such, but if a FSO, food safety officer, goes and picks a sample which is giving a claim and it does not have the approval, then definitely that FBO is likely to, have prosecution. So in that way, we do have a check, and of course, many of the consumer complaints, as and when we get, we also put a notice, a legal notice to the FBO that why such kind of claim was taken without going through the claim approval process. So that is how we handle. If you permit, I can just, for your information, I don't know whether I can share my screen again one more time. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, please.
I'm just going to the, I think, the net is not working.
Okay, maybe we can address it later on. Maybe it's okay.
So you can just go to the standards. There you have, non-specified food products, and in that you can also find the claim approval. So there you can, we also have one system called as e-pass. I think that will work. So here also you have the application system where you can apply for a product, for a claim approval application has to be done either through the FBO login or non-FBO login. And procedures, all those things are described in the website, how to go for that. Whether you want, if there is a non-specified which does not have a standard, they need to go through this particular portal. And that is how one is going. If someone has already done it, that is false. They, have to get the approval from the FSSAI, or else they can be legally prosecuted.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Jacob. And I think if there are no more questions, and also we have run out of time, I would sort of like to wind up this today's session. Are there any critical questions from anyone?
Yes, sir. There are a few questions from.
I can take only 2 questions.
Okay.
The rest we can answer them separately.
Sure, I'll read out.
Yeah, quickly.
One question from Dr. Aviraj. It is addressed to Dr. Jacob. So he says we need a database for new and emerging pollutants for different type of processing unit effluents. At least a list of top 10 to 20 such chemicals would be really helpful. Presently, we often don't know which antibiotics or which preservative substance to look for in the effluent.
Again, the list is there. You have to see the FSSAI website. There is a contaminant regulation and there is a compendium. It's a huge document. You can see the limits and the pesticide and the one which have been banned. All those things are available in the website. Since the website is not working, I could have shown where to look. So this information is already there.
Thank you, sir. One question from Christine to Ms. Pradnya WFP. What are the expected roles that research institution or agency should play in ensuring food availability and accessibility debates?
Right. Thank you so much. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, in fact, I think this is a good question, and I would say that it's like a pivot role, in fact, that research agencies can really play. And when it comes to, if you're talking about availability, it actually is a function of not just production, but also import, exports, and others. So, I mean, the roles of research institutes will range from right from improving the new varieties which are more nutritious, which are more climate resilient, which in fact are having lesser maybe the gestation or harvesting period, working on the planting materials, and I mean those are basically resistant to some of these or reduce the pesticides and fertilizers. So a lot of in fact role, and one of the major roles is also around creating an evidence, because we have been talking about many things like I mean what exactly I mean what are the kind of reasons in terms of nutritional outcomes of various recommended varieties, and also which in fact can guide the messaging around it to reach the people and also the policymakers, so that it really can play a crucial role. So I would say that a lot of in fact aspects can be covered by these research agencies through their work and I mean research around it. Huge scope, and it will keep on increasing, I would say. From the access perspective, I mean, it again would be how to really make nutritious food available at affordable cost. What are the implications from the perspective of changing climate? For example, if the moisture increases, the storage and the guidelines for the large-scale storage of food grains are something which in fact need to be really monitored much better. What are the kind of technological innovations or renewable sources of energy which can help? So in fact, I mean, I would say that ranging from coming out with innovative solutions to creating evidence and then the policy advocacy are the major kind of important roles that research institutions can play. I mean, I can just answer this much, but there will be much more scope which will pan out as with growing concerns of climate change as well as nutrition.
So I think I think we can close this session today, because we have already overshot our time, but it was a very, very useful and I think, a very informative session we had. We discussed across the spectrum, and it would be my duty now to put this together in some sort of proceedings and share with everybody and come up with some sort of directives or action points to take it forward. It's also an opportunity for us to network, and we look forward to continue this discussion wherever we meet or in some other platform or virtually. So finally, I would like to propose a vote of thanks to formally close this seminar today. It's my pleasant duty to propose the vote of thanks to acknowledge the tremendous amount of support that we have received across ICRISAT from the webinar. At the outset, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Ms Mansi Nimbhal, IAS State Mission Director, Chief Executive Officer, Odisha Livelihoods Mission, Govt of Odisha, for taking the time to share her strategic insights to promote sustainable, Nutri and gender-sensitive resilient food systems. I thank Dr Sanu Jacob, Director, Southern Region Office, Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, FSSAI, for sharing his valuable inputs on ways to promote sustainable nutrition and ensure access to quality and safe food for all, and also telling us what is Eat Right and how we could all follow that concept of Eat Right. And in fact, thanks for proposing that ICRISAT could become Eat Right campus. We'll take it forward and connect with you, sir. We are immensely thankful to all our panelists. Dr. Ganesh Ramamurthi, if you're there, please put on your video so that we could also have a picture of yourself together. Then Dr. Padmaja, if you're there, Madam Pradnya, thank you for your very much insightful presentation and subsequent discussions we have had. Dr. Victor, thank you again. We'd like to place on record the special thanks of ICRISAT leaders, Dr. Jacqueline Hughes, Director General, Dr. Arvind Kumar, Deputy Director General Research, for their constant support and encouragement in organizing this program. We take this opportunity to thank Dr. Victor Afari-Sefa, Research Program Director, Enabling System Transformation, for as always being the catalyst for us to inspire and organize such program. And in fact, even today's program was catalyzed by him. An event of this stature would not have been possible without the able support of ICRISAT's communication team, led by Dr. Ramon Pichi, Director Communications, and also for Information System Unit, led by Rajiv Dangal. In fact, this webinar has been live streamed over YouTube, and you would be able to access this recording also. So promoting Nutri and gender-sensitive resilient food system is in fact a bird's eye view of ICRISAT's work on every aspect of research and development along the agriculture value chain. In achieving this, the constant support of Team ICRISAT is acknowledged. I would like to acknowledge the support of the team from the Agribusiness and Innovation Platform of ICRISAT, led by Mr. Aravasi Selvaraj, Chief Executive Officer. I thank the team for the enormous cooperation in organizing this event. Special thanks are due to Ms. Vanisha, Ms. Priyanka, Ms. Divya Nancy, and Mr. Shiva, who has been working over the last few weeks. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all the participants for being there and for the active participations, the questions and time. Thank you so much. And I hope, Vanisha, you're taking a group photograph. Padmaja, maybe you could take off your mask.
Yes, sir.
If you're not driving, Padmaja. Yeah, I think you're being driven. So yeah, thank you so much. And with this, we come to an end of this seminar and look forward probably to have further discussions ahead. Thank you all. Have a nice day and a nice evening.
Thank you, Dr. Saikat.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Singh.
Thank you.